It is 6:31 p.m. on the 30th of July, 2020, and I am calling this meeting of the North Andover School Committee back to order, having opened an executive session at 6 o'clock. And we're having a little bit of technical difficulty, and we're just going to move forward and see how we do. Before we begin, I need to read a statement about our open meeting. This open meeting of the North Andover School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings. And as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded, so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will include public comment received via email as posted on the agenda. For this meeting, the North Andover School Committee is convening by video conference as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda, and before we do, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate minutes. I, the chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the list of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Please remember to mute your phone or your computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And finally, each vote taken this meeting will be conducted by roll call. I want to read out a roll call of those who are present and will be able to participate in this meeting. This list is in no particular order, but was shared with me in advance. So when I say your name, if you can verbally respond in the affirmative that you are present, that will be helpful to our minutes. So first I have Chet Jackson.
Here.
Thank you. Christopher Raymond.
Here.
Tiffany Goddard.
Here.
George Gonzalez.
Here.
Joe Clark.
Here.
Nicole Murphy.
Here.
Brian LaGrosse.
Here.
Jane Broderick.
Here.
Caroline Ibbotson.
Here.
Dr. Kenneth Chan. Cheryl Barzak.
Here.
Cheryl, Dr. Chan is not with us tonight at this point.
I just received a text that he's having difficulty logging in. I will resend him the link.
Okay, great. If he makes it, we'll make sure that we record that in the rolls. Mr. Richard Cushing. Mr. Cushing, are you here? All right, we assume that that Mr. Cushing is not here at the moment.
I can see him.
I saw him, so he might be having an audio issue.
Might be frozen.
Okay, I can't see him or hear him at the moment, but he may be here, and that will be helpful. Erin O'Laughlin.
Here.
Thank you.
Ellen, sorry to interrupt. Rich Cushing just texted that his power just went out.
Okay, well, when he can join us, he can join us. That will be fine. Dr. Gilligan?
Present.
Dr. Mealy?
Here.
Karen Leahy? Karen Leahy? Anybody have a status update on Karen Leahy? Feel like an auctioneer? We will assume that she will join us if she can. Lorene Marks?
Here.
And committee members. Amy Mealy?
I am here.
Andrew McDevitt?
Here?
David Teresi?
Aye.
And Holly Vitsky Lynch.
Here.
Okay.
Did you say Marcy? Marcy Bacuzzi, I can see her.
I'm here.
Marcy Bacuzzi.
Already unmuted.
Oh, you are on, I'm sorry, you're at the top of the back side of the paper. I'm sorry, I missed
No
your name
problem.
there. Thank you for being here. Is there anyone else present who has not been named? Okay, then that is who is here. So our first order of business is public comment. And we do have 4 comments from the public that I received today. I'm looking at email and there is none received since the last time I looked. So this is the, in order that they were received, the first received is the first that I will read. The first one is from Deborah Smith, who says, quote, "In light of the change in the start date for school, has anyone heard if the vacation dates will be the same? I don't know why we can't add those 10 days back in via the vacations and at the end of the school year. Why are the kids losing out on their learning time once again? Just wondering if this is a discussion anywhere. I'd be happy to add if I knew it would get any kind of answer." So thank you, Deborah Smith. The second public comment is from Suzanne Nobley. And it says, quote, "I hope you're well and staying safe this summer. Challenging times are ahead. I have 2 comments for Thursday's meeting. Hopefully, if these are on the agenda, there can be a response to them. 1, I'd like the school committee to communicate what their role is, and the goals are to assist the school with their fall school year plans and how they plan to accomplish their goals. 2, to keep our kids more accountable, as the teachers indicate they'd like to see from their survey. I would like to see guidelines for how frequently Power School is updated with regards to grades, feedback on students, and guidance. Excuse me, and attendance." That's from Suzanne Nobley. The third is from Jen Goldman. "If students are not required to be in the classroom, it is very important that online attendance is tracked so students are accountable to their teachers. I would strongly urge that teaching lessons would be broadcast in real time using video and screen share technology that allows for interactions with students." Thank you, Jen Goldman. And our last public comment for tonight is from Kevin Driscoll. And it reads, quote, "Good afternoon, Chairperson Picard. Please find my public comment for the school committee meeting below. With regard to reopening, I think the message from the public is loud and clear. We support our teachers 100%, but there must be a higher level of accountability for student learning if they are to be successful in 20-21. It seems clear that as we head into August, we will have a long way to go in the fight to control C-19. And thus I assume our students and teachers will remain safely home for the start of the 2020-21 school year. I am hopeful that we have learned our lessons from the spring and that our students will be formally engaged daily in online learning. This fall, the remote/distance learning program should feature semicolon, live video classes, and online virtual instruction. Daily check-ins with their class, parentheses, both peers and teachers, unparentheses, and attendance tracking to ensure our students are not falling through the cracks. We have time to make this happen and to roll this out formally and efficiently. I encourage the school committee and central office leadership to do whatever needs to be done to provide the necessary support our teachers deserve so they in turn can guide and educate our students and continue to meet the standards we in North Andover have come to expect. Thank you for your continued service to the community. Kevin Driscoll. Thank you, Mr. Driscoll. That is what we have for public comment tonight. So our next order of business is approval of our minutes, which are included or attached to the agenda. And I would accept a motion by one of our committee members to approve the minutes.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of, I don't have it open, the date.
June 25th.
June 25th, as presented in the packet. Thanks, Mr. McDevitt.
I'll second that.
So Amy Mealy moved and Andrew McDevitt seconded. Is there any discussion from the board members about the minutes? And I will read your names by roll call. So Ms. Vitsky Lynch?
Yes.
Nope, just whether or not you have comments.
No questions.
Concerns, okay. This is the discussion portion. Mr. Teresi?
Nope.
Mr. McDevitt?
Nope.
And Ms. Mabley?
No comments.
And I have no comments, and so we'll have a roll call vote, starting with Ms. Vitsky Lynch
Yes.
and Mr. Teresi,
Aye.
Ms. Mabley,
Aye.
and Mr. McDevitt.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so the minutes are approved unanimously 5-0. Our next order of business is our superintendent report. And we have three items there, and he can address them. Thank you, Dr. Gilligan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We wanted to give an update tonight on Special Education Summer School, and to do so is our Executive Director of Special Education, Marcy Bacuzzi. Marcy?
Yep. Thanks. Summer school's going great. We have started 2 programs on July 20th and the rest of the programs on July 27th. We brought students in based on the guidance, our most severe students. So students that are mostly in our sub-separate programs, they're doing fantastic. The teachers are doing fantastic. Attendance is great. I think we ended up with 34 students out of somewhere in the low 40s. So many students came back. So that was great. And for the most part, I've been everywhere, and they haven't missed a beat. They're wearing masks. Parents did an amazing job at doing some work over the last few months. So I really couldn't be more pleased with the training and the work and the diligence that has happened with the teachers. So great job, and thank you. It was 41 kids or 44 kids was a grand undertaking, and I think Cheryl and Gilly and Lorene and Jim, it was and Lucy, it was a lot of effort and a lot of people, and it ended up working out fantastic. So I'm glad we got there.
Marcy, thank you. I'm so proud of you and your summer school staff. It's been great seeing kids come into this building to test and do some other things. So really appreciate it, and we know how much work it took to get that up and running. So thank you.
And I should say, separate from summer programming, we also have other teachers that have started the evaluation process as we are, given the school closure, we're pretty significantly behind in getting kids evaluated. So, some in-person toes dipped. So, and thus far, everything's been going smoothly.
Great. Thank you, Marcy. Next, we have overnight trips and trips that were booked and set up for, I think, 2020 and 2021. Dr. Mealy, could you take this one? It was a question about what trips did we have, and we wanted to know what if there were refund policies, if there were any down payments made.
Right, and there's a spreadsheet that's been completed and was included in the packet. And as you can see, for instance, the first one, the high school French students going to Palmyra, France, that the company has always been flexible and cooperative, and they would anticipate that continuing. I think Chris Cowley even had said that when she was here for the approval. The others haven't been submitted yet, but Nature's Classroom full refunds are available. We will, in DECA competition, the other two, and they have been, they follow the same guidelines as usual, which is if the students cancels within 7 days, they get a refund. And that was the last three, actually. And that was it for what we have on the agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Mealy. Any questions on the field trips?
So, I only see one international trip. Are we anticipating any others coming?
I think at this time, Mr. McDevitt, we will not have field trips coming forth until we, have a better handle on COVID-19.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Mabley?
I see that a whole bunch of them, the rest of them were not submitted to us. I'm certain it's because of the current situation, and based on the departures of most of them, I would imagine we're not going to be even entertaining these. Is that what you were stating, Dr. Gilligan?
Yes. If
Thank
you
you.
look, I think a few of them are even in 2021. And
Right.
that would be the case.
Yeah, one of them. Okay, thank you. Two of them, yeah.
All right. Next up from the superintendent's report, the appointment of a representative to the North Andover Commission on Inclusion, Equity, and Diversity. And we would like to appoint our Assistant Superintendent, Lorene Marks. And Lorene, if you'd like to talk a little bit about the other two positions, or Chair Picard from the schools side.
Sure. Would you like me to speak first?
That'd be
I
great.
would like you to do so, Ms. Marks.
Okay. Thank you for the appointment. This is an area that has been of great interest and passion for me for a few years now. And luckily, we are forming a great team. Kristen Ando has been a huge help. Carrie Caffrey-Zwingy and Brooke Randall have taken on some leadership roles with that over the summer with some of our professional development. So we are branching out and expanding our efforts. The commission was looking for somebody from the Building Respectful Communities group, and we have asked Ellen Peters, who has been a PE teacher and part of that group, and is also our assistant principal at the elementary level, as well as a resident in town. So she will be our representative for that seat. And then we also had suggested that a student from the Race Amity group be a piece of this participant in this group. So Supraja Ganti has been the leader for that group last year and will continue to be a leader this year. And I spoke with her, and she is honored and excited to be the student representative.
Ms. Marks, thank you. And I really look forward to another great year. Particularly, we'll have a lot of professional development on many things, but the work you put forward last year to the actively anti-racism work with Dr. Ibram Kendi and the book club and the bias course, and Mirko Chardon, Dr. Kim Parker as part of our PD. It's work that will be ongoing, and it's very important. So thank you. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Does that conclude your report? Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you all for that work that you're doing for our students and for our community as a whole. So it is time for the chair's report. And our first item is discussion of meeting dates. We're meeting obviously now. Our next meeting date is scheduled for August 10th. And on August 10th is our opportunity to vote on the plan. I thought it would be helpful for the community, since these are unusual times, to know what the guidance from the Mass Association of School Committees are for our responsibilities in this. So by July 31st, each school district must submit to the department the 3 plans required, and these plans should be presented to the school committee so that they can share them with the community. So they are being presented tonight and they are being shared with the community. I know that there's an email that's either pending or has already been sent out. The plan will be, or maybe is, already linked to the agenda, and I imagine it will be available on the website. By August 10th, our next meeting, each school district has to submit the plan chosen for implementation to the department. Since the plan will require amendments to existing policy as well as budget revisions and reallocations, this plan should be approved and endorsed by school committee prior to submission to the department. And then between August 10th and the start of the school year, which may be delayed up to 10 days to permit professional development and preparation based on the most recent announcements from DESE. The school committee may have to negotiate certain parts of the plan with the appropriate unions within their district, and every effort should be made to expedite these negotiations to ensure a timely opening of schools. As the start of the school year approaches, the school committee will need to address revisions or waivers to some of the policies that we have established, and as well as the student handbook language. And there are policy areas to concentrate on identified by the Mass Association of School Committees to assist us in this process. So I thought that would be helpful for folks to know. And it will be likely that we will have another meeting in August. It would be my preference to try to do them on Thursday nights, as is our practice. So if committee members have conflicts on Thursday nights, if they can let me know, that would be very helpful. If necessary, I mean, August 10th is obviously not a Thursday night, but that's the night that's best available for the committee to come together to do that work. So I would ask if there are any questions or comments on our upcoming dates before I move on to the next piece of the report. And I will do that by roll call, starting with Mr. Teresi.
Are you asking for input on the dates right now, Madam Chair?
No, just if you have any questions, comments, or concerns.
Well,
We can, I think we can look at dates offline.
Okay, then I have no questions then.
Thank you. And Ms. Vitsky-Lynch.
So, yeah, I'm just trying to look at my calendar, but I have a lot of softball games on Thursday nights in the summer, so.
Okay, we will take that into consideration and do our best to schedule around. Thank you very much for saying that.
Yep.
Ms. Mabley?
I'm fine to explore dates.
Okay, and Mr. McDevitt?
Fine to explore dates as well.
Okay, so we will do that offline and as necessary. So our second piece of the Chair's report is an announcement with regards to the teacher's contract, the teaching assistant's contract, and the administrative assistant's contract. They've all been ratified by both the union and the school committee, and we're pleased to announce that those contracts will be in effect from September 1, 2020 to June 30th, 2023. And one additional piece, we do not always know when our students in North Andover have achieved things that are outside of the immediate school setting, but from time to time we're made aware of them. And this week I learned that Pranali Ashara, a rising junior at North Andover High School, has earned her Girl Scout Gold Award, and her project had to do with food rescue in the Spofford School in the town of Boxford next door to us. I know she was assisted by folks in North Andover who are already doing an awful lot of food rescue. She's also been elected to serve on the board of directors for Girl Scouts of Eastern Massachusetts, and she's got a 2-year appointment to the North Andover Sustainability Committee. So we're thankful for all the achievements of North Andover High School students and students at the younger grades. And we're thankful that that information came to our attention so that we could celebrate Pranali. And that is the end of the chair's report. Unless somebody can tell me that they have a question or a concern. I'm looking at everyone but Mr. Teresi. I'm not seeing anybody raising a hand or looking for clarification. So we are on to old business. So our old business is our superintendent's year-end evaluation. Normally this is done before the end of June, but as we all know, we were quite busy. The summary of our report is attached to our agenda tonight and is on the screen. Thank you, Dr. Mealy, for sharing that. And usually what we do is have each committee member be able to speak to the superintendent with any feedback or any particular words that they like to share verbally, even though we did have an opportunity to share in writing. So I would entertain the opportunity to do that, and I would start with Mr. Teresi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to repeat a lot of the comments that I made in the evaluation, but Greg is right in front of me, and I just want to say, you know, as chair last year, I thought you did a fantastic job working with us in some incredibly difficult situation. I don't need to rehash everything, but you know, basically since you got on board, it's been like one crisis after another. Opening new school, the gas explosions, obviously COVID. You've maintained your professionalism. You've maintained an incredible sense of humor through the whole thing. I think you have got your team to respond over and over again. I have not yet, I just received this report today about reopening, and I'm sure we may have some disagreements on that one, but I know how much time and effort you put into this. The amount of contact that you and I have had over the last year, emails, texts, phone calls, you know, people, the public needs to know how much you are dedicated to this job, how much you love this job, how much you love the kids, the teachers, the people you work with. I mean, I know we picked the right guy a couple years ago, Greg, so I'm very happy with your performance, and I think there'll probably be an announcement later on in the agenda about your contract, but I can't say enough good things about you, Greg, so I'm happy you're on board with us. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you, Mr. Teresi. Ms. Vitsky-Lynch.
I reiterate what David just said. And while I wasn't chair this year, working closely with him the year before, I saw how hard he worked. And the communication from him to school committee members is always excellent. He gets back to us right away. And I agree with what David said.
Thank you very much. And Mr. McDevitt.
So I really won't add to much more of what has already been said so far. You know, we've had some of these conversations in the past. I mean, I think in the past, you know, 2+ years, you know, with everything that's gone on and your ability, Dr. Gilligan, to help try to keep safety of our students and our faculty and our staff at the forefront of all of your decision making has really been always impressive, and a guiding light for you as you kind of make decisions with us. So happy to continue working with you in the next couple of years.
Thank you, Mr. McDevitt. And Ms. Mealy.
So I agree with my colleagues, and I wrote some lengthy comments on the evaluation. So the one thing I will say is crises also provide you an opportunity to be a leader, and to lead under duress is a challenge, but it's also a way that pushes you to grow. And you've grown quite a lot in the last 2 years in the position, and I know that you have a lot more to offer, and we look forward to working with you here. And I also recognize that through your leadership, you've also been excellent about encouraging and allowing space for your colleagues and your team to lead, and I appreciate that greatly.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy. This is a little strange because I can't see you, Dr. Gilligan, as I'm speaking, but what I would appreciate, in addition to all the things that my colleagues have said, is your leadership in town and across the region. I'm really pleased with the way you've been able to help welcome our new town manager and continue with the consensus budgets, especially in a challenging situation where we even had to have our town meeting outside. And your regional leadership with other superintendents, with the SEAM Collaborative, and with others. So we are pleased to be able to provide that leadership for our students and our staff, and the excellent team that you have around you, as well as a regional response to the issues that arise. So thank you very much for all that.
I'd like to thank all of you for your kind words, and I would say that it's truly been a team effort the last 2 years. Certainly challenges give you a chance to show leadership skills, and I've had plenty of chances to do so, but it's truly a team effort, and I have great people around me. I am fortunate to work with a great team here in central office and leaders of buildings. We've had several changes just in this short 2 years in big and key positions. And from the teachers and all our educators down to the kids. This is a tremendous place to work. This is a place people care about the schools, they care about our kids, and you know, my values align with their aspirations for what an education should look like here in North Andover. So I'm proud to work here.
So thank you so much. Looking at the minutes from prior evaluations, and given the current circumstances where we're not all together, we can't read that report until it's collected. So we have voted to accept the report in prior years, and so I would ask for a motion to accept the evaluation report as presented in the packet.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Good, so it's moved by Ms. Mealy and seconded by Mr. McDevitt. I will ask if there's any discussion, but I feel like we already had the discussion. So I'm looking to see if anybody feels like they need to have discussion. I'm not seeing anybody wave or need attention. Mr. Teresi, shout out if you need to have discussion.
I don't need attention, no.
Okay, so we will go right ahead and vote, and we will start with Mr. Teresi.
Aye.
Ms. Mealy?
Aye.
Ms. VT Lynch?
Yes.
Mr. McDevitt?
Yes.
And the chair accepts the report as well, voting aye. So 5-0 in favor of that. Thank you. And now we are to new business, the big event of the day, and I will turn it over to Dr. Gilligan and his team.
Great. Thank you so much, Helen. I know that you announced all the folks that are here tonight, but it's really great to have all of our principals here. Cheryl Barzak, our nurse admin, Dr. Chan, I'm not sure if he was able to get on yet, nurse Carolyn Ibbotson from the town public health, Brian LaGrasse from the Board of Health, along with our entire team, principals, our SEL director, Nikki Murphy, and I'm not sure if I missed anyone else, but I think and last, but certainly not least, fifth grade teacher from the Kittredge, Jane Broderick, is here tonight, and I think that's what we have. So, Dr. Mealy, I know this is, okay, you got the slide, thanks. Yeah, this has been the topic. It's a topic everywhere, and one of great importance. And if we could start with the slideshow, we will look at the school district and what the Department of Education has asked us to do. And we'll go through a pretty comprehensive presentation tonight and take a look at it. It is possible to prepare for the future without knowing what it will be. The primary way to prepare for the unknown is to attend to the quality of our relationships, to how well we know and trust one another. Margaret Wheatley. And I think there is, as we look back, nothing more important than the relationships in which we build, and as we move forward as a community and support families and support students and support each other, we have to take care of each other, and I know that North Andover is a place that can do that. If you could go to the next slide, Dr. Mealy.
Actually, just so you know, Principal Clark is presenting right now, so he's moving the slides for you.
Oh, thank you, Joe Clark from the Franklin. So really a couple key points talking about a reopening of school for the fall. As we take a look back and you think about the crisis education of 2020 in March and the challenges and unprecedented challenges in which took place, it's really remarkable that we're able to move forward in such a way. It was really quite something else to be out. And I know that remote learning was a challenge for many families. It was a challenge for teachers. It was a challenge for administrators. It was a challenge for everyone. And it certainly was a different way of doing something. Definitely a different way of doing something that has really never happened in the North Andover Public Schools since 1918. So as we take a look back, I think one of the key things is really thinking about going forward about the lessons learned. And I think that, you'll see tonight there are very different guidelines in place by the state than we had in the spring. And, interestingly, you talk to parents, you talk to teachers, they're looking forward to more connection and FaceTime and more consistency, attendance, grades, and some of those things that motivate kids. And as a parent of two, I totally understand that. So I'm really excited about moving forward and in these difficult times because we have great people on this team and we will always do what's best for our kids. I think what people should know up front as the leader of this district is that the health and safety and the well-being of our kids is absolutely the #1 and top priority. And I know that many folks have different opinions on the pandemic of COVID-19 across this nation here in Massachusetts and around the world. But we are very fortunate to have such a great Board of Health, our town nurse and Cheryl Barzak, and help guide me and guide us as a team. But the health and safety of our kids is paramount. The second part of it is, the social emotional learning and the mental health and well-being, and not only of our students, but of our staff as well, and of our families. This has been a tremendous strain, and we will have our social emotional learning director speak next, and a challenge for families all across Massachusetts and the world. I read a stat that 1.5 billion with a B kids were out of school this past spring. So not only the physical health and safety is being the top priority for staff and students, but the mental health as well. As we take a look at that, what we've been asked to do is, at this point, come up with a draft or preliminary recommendation, taking into consideration, many categories that the state has put forward in terms of health and safety and what's best for students. And I would really like to say that it's been a really thoughtful and inclusive process. I have never seen such great feedback and have worked with so many different folks from the district leadership task force, and, the faculty and staff working group, that was our summer institute, the parent advisory and focus groups. I mean, the work that they did getting honest and frank feedback from parents at all of the schools and from the NAPAC, Special Education PAC, was absolutely remarkable. And those reports are in the plan, and they are also online. School-based teams will continue to work throughout this spring, and as I said, this summer into the fall. And as I said, really lucky to work with a great town manager, a school nurse, admin like Cheryl Barzak, the public health director, Chief McCarthy, Chief Gray, the DPW and the facilities operations, the school physician, and meeting regularly with them has really been outstanding. So that feedback, and working so closely with the North Andover Teachers Association, as well as principals getting feedback from students. I mean, this is all critical and important to think about as we look to plan to reopen schools and educate our kids here in North Andover. So I did want to ask, because really one of the most valuable groups, they were all valuable, but a terrific group was the Summer Institute. That was a group of 36 plus teachers and administrators working together to tackle the challenges of reopening school. And I invited Jane here tonight to talk just briefly about the process from a teacher's perspective. Jane is a 5th grade teacher at the Kittredge School. Miss Broderick.
Hi. I was sitting here listening to what you were saying about trusting each other and community, and I joined it, and we were virtual in June, and it was really interesting because I got to meet high school teachers and find out what their view is versus ours. But the last 2 Mondays we met in person, and I was a little leery in coming, but I really liked it because it was that feeling of community that you miss, and that we're all in the same boat. We're all worrying about the same things. We had really open conversations, and I felt like everyone was listened to, and there were contributions, and people came up with ideas of concerns. We thought of concerns first and tried to think of possibilities. We were in small groups, and Joe Clark was our note taker, and thinking about, okay, what happens from the moment in elementary school, the moment the kids get there, from when they get off the bus or walk in, people at the door. We talked about greeters. We talked about all kinds of situations and tried to think of all the things that happen during the day. And words that you think of, it's daunting. There's so many different things to consider. And it keeps going back to, I worry about curriculum and what are we going to teach, but we really have to get everybody feeling comfortable being together. And we spent a long time talking about that. I thought it was a very valuable experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. And we were lucky to have John Dioria to help assist us with that, and Dr. Mealy for facilitating, I think, did a wonderful job. But the diverse perspectives across all schools, all content areas, has been really valuable to date, and I think will continue to be valuable throughout the course as we move forward, along with working so closely with the Teachers Association and getting feedback from staff. That's really important. So before I turn it over, I would say that these working groups, of many people, have really helped guide us to where we are today. And what we need to do is submit to the Department of Secondary and Elementary Education a plan looking at 3 aspects of in-person with safety precautions, a hybrid model, and the ability to go remote. And I think that with COVID-19, we, through lessons learned and through hard work and through some foresight, particularly Mr. Grant ordering 2,400 laptops when districts can't get them, and they've been coming in, things of that nature. We've really been able to come up and put together a plan at this time that it's an initial draft recommendation, and you'll see the draft online on our website, northandoverpublicschools.com. And at this time, and the principals will talk quite a bit about it, looking at what we have, I think we have to consider input from Cheryl Barzak, the Board of Health, Mass DPH, Dr. Chan, and with the 10 days that the commissioner has set school back for really important professional development, in my opinion, as superintendent. At this time, we think that a recommendation of a 2-3 hybrid model in grades 1 through 12, that would be, and the principals will go into it, but in a nutshell, students would attend partial day, almost, 2/3 of a day, Monday and Thursday, and Tuesday and Friday, and Wednesday the classes would come together. It'd be 2 cohorts and meet remotely in grades 1 through 12, and an AM, PM half day, kindergarten hybrid with work home. So I'm really proud of the work that the team has done looking at this. There is nothing that I take more seriously than the health of our students and our staff, and the complexities in which go into running a school system when you think about operations and you think about facilities and you think about teaching and learning and social emotional learning, transportation, very, very challenging in this time, and I'm lucky to have a good team around. So next steps is we have to put forward a direction that we think could really make sense for North Andover tomorrow, and we will do so. And we'll continue to get feedback from folks, and the school committee will take this up on the agenda August 10th for a vote. But I imagine throughout August, plans will be being refined across not only North Andover, but the region and the state. So with that, I turn it over to our Director of Social Emotional Learning, Nikki Murphy.
Thank you, Dr. Gilligan. And I just want to start just by, I'll be brief because I know there's a lot to cover tonight, but I do want to thank the school committee members and Dr. Gilligan and Laureen Marks for really prioritizing social emotional learning in the district and understanding how crucial it is always, but even more so in really these difficult times. I think this prioritization from the district for the past few years has really primed and prepped us and allowed us to be kind of ahead of the curve compared to a lot of other districts, just to support the development of a really comprehensive social emotional learning plan to support our students, staff, and families during the situation we find ourselves in with COVID-19. And I also just want to briefly thank my leadership team colleagues and the working groups that Dr. Gilligan referenced for contributing to sort of the ongoing development of this SEL plan. I think that we all know that, people hear me talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs all the time. And really, when we look at Maslow's hierarchy, we're talking about physical safety and then emotional safety as really being the foundation for learning to be able to take place. And so without creating school systems that are physically safe, kids won't feel emotionally safe and staff won't. And we need that in order to be able to move forward and really help them be prepared to learn. So these broad sort of topic areas for integration planning for SEL, we're working on all of these, but what we really want to do is start off with doing some assessments and some data collection, specifically in the form of some universal screenings and also some surveys from staff and students and families that will inform what the plan will look like. We have some surveys and some information, but we need to do some universal screenings to screen for anxiety, depression, potentially trauma. And typically universal screenings are done several times throughout the year to assess whether or not whatever plans we put into place and services we provide are effective in servicing the social emotional needs of, again, staff and students. I think when we look at what we want to put into place, we want to use that. Everyone's seen the multi-tiered system of support triangle that addresses both academic and social emotional needs of students. But we're going to use that triangle as a way to provide services and supports on all three tiers, tier 1, 2, and 3, not just for students, but also for staff and families, because we understand that adults and families are struggling with COVID, obviously, and with some social emotional needs, just like our students are. So we want to start out with collecting some data to help inform what we want to do throughout the course of the year. We definitely want to start in the beginning of the year, hopefully in those first couple of weeks, with a lot of professional development for educators. We would touch on many topic areas: how to integrate social emotional learning practices into the classroom at the tier 1 level for all students, how to provide wellness PD so that staff can learn to take care of themselves and help themselves through this, because we know that this isn't linear. They could come in and be feeling strong, and then, God forbid, something happens to a member of their family, they get sick, and suddenly they find themselves experiencing, some symptoms of trauma, some symptoms of anxiety or depression. So they're going to need a lot of support in the way of professional development, not just to help the students with what they might be experiencing emotionally, but also to help themselves. So we wanted to front load with a lot of professional development for educators. We also want to work on a parent university where we're providing as much support to families as possible around how to support their children through all of the various issues that they might see with their children, whether it's an increase in anxiety symptoms, an increase in depression symptoms, how to manage things like when you're spending a lot of time at home with your kids and there's more arguments, what does SEL look like at home? And so we would like to create some videos, and again, early on to sort of help parents feel like they're prepared going into this year, that they could access on video throughout the course of the year, whenever they have the time to be able to support their children and hopefully help themselves as well, because everyone's obviously being challenged during this time. So we have some structures in place, which is great. What I was referencing earlier with social emotional learning is that we've created SEL data and implementation teams at all the schools, and we also have a district SEL team. And so some of those structures will really help us with being able to support service delivery and implementation. We have groups like the BRC, a community group that could really help support hopefully the implementation, help us as a thought partner in brainstorming, some different structures that we might need to add or some different programming we might need to add. And the wonderful thing is in the research I've been doing over several months about different programs that we can provide, there's a lot of free virtual programs. So everything that we're doing when we're looking at creating this SEL plan that's very comprehensive, are a lot of free programs, number one, and programs that seamlessly move from when we're in person versus hybrid or fully remote, whether it's things teachers can access for support, students or families. So we also want to strengthen and expand our partnerships with outside agencies. We do have therapists that come into the schools and provide counseling for kids. And we now are going to ask them to provide those services via telehealth, because we're trying to obviously reduce the amount of adults we bring into the school. And then we need to look a lot at strengthening our tier 2 and tier 3 programs, because we're guessing that we'll have a lot of kids that normally fell into tier 1, meaning kids who were doing okay, not symptomatic, but maybe now with all of the added pressures and anxiety around COVID, that they might be what need some more tier 2 sort of targeted extra supplemental supports. And in terms of tier 1 SEL integration, we are creating not just morning meetings for all elementary kids, but closing meetings as well. And that also can be done virtually. And I'm working together and offering the principals sort of a framework, and I'll be doing a lot of training with staff, with teaching staff, on what that looks like. And it would be integrated more tier 1 for all students in structures like advisory at NAMS and at the high school. So I'll stop there because I could go on forever about this, but this little sort of triangle is kind of like the multi-tiered systems of support triangle that I put together to give an example. And this is just about staff support, about what it looks like when you're talking about tier 1, which is universal, versus tier 2, which is those supplemental supports for people who are at risk. And then the tier 3 intensive needs, which is usually a smaller part of the population. And again, we would do this for families, we would do this for students, but I think it gives you an idea of what it might look like for staff. I mean, we have to think about the fact that at tier 3, we might have some staff that are struggling with their own anxiety and depression, with potentially, God forbid, the death of a family member or a medical or mental health challenge they're experiencing themselves, some severe resource shortages. There's any number of issues, right, at all 3 tiers that all of these various groups in our North Andover community are going to need some support with. So we're creating a very comprehensive SEL plan. We have an amazing team in place. The SEL department is filled with excellent counselors. We have great teachers. And even though we have lots of work to do, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it well. And I'm really looking forward to being able to work with a broader group of people and even more teachers to really help them feel like they're able to integrate SEL best practices into their classroom. Thank you.
Dr. Mealy.
Yep. So next is one of the first things we were asked to do from the state was to conduct a feasibility study for all of our schools, in particular, how we would be able to get the students back into schools, maintaining the social distancing. And they asked us to do this for both 3 feet distancing between students in the classrooms and 6 feet. And so that's what you see in front of you. They gave us tools that if you measured, and what we measured was the usable square footage, so that if there was a unit, a HVAC unit along the wall, we didn't count that space because obviously even on the other side of it where there might be the wall and a foot or two of space, it wasn't going to be usable because you didn't have a straight line of use. So we only measured the usable square footage in the classrooms, and they gave us tools to, once you plug that in, it would tell you how many desks you could fit at 3 feet and how many you could fit at 6 feet. And then we went out into the classrooms and checked to make sure that those tools they were providing were accurate, and it turned out they were. And what you see here is the result of that feasibility study at the different schools. So at 3 feet, you can see for the most part 24 to 26 in some of the larger classrooms could fit. But at 6 feet, it's pretty much half of that at the classrooms. That you can get about 12, 13, and in the largest classrooms, 14 students at 6 feet apart. In addition to students in the classroom, we also looked at the ability to move the students through the school, arrival and departure, and the ability to do all that, bathrooms, also we had to look at one of the big things. If you have a conversation with anybody about the possibility to come back to school, one of the first things that's going to come up is air quality or ventilation. We certainly are looking at that with the facilities manager. We constantly monitor that anyway, not just during COVID-19, but we're certainly looking at ways that we can maximize that to alleviate any concerns people might have in that regard. PPE, we're ordering as much PPE as we think we could possibly need. And using the COVID funding to do that. We've replaced tables because in a lot of our elementary classrooms especially, tables were used to create the pods, and you just can't create the same distancing with the table, so we've ordered desks to replace the tables. We're working with the town manager to accommodate us with regards to storage, because we're going to have to move some furniture out of the classrooms to make them more able to handle the number of students in it with the social distancing, and to store those tables we're replacing. So Melissa Rodriguez is working with us on that. And am I missing anything?
No, I mean, I think the foresight of you and Cheryl Barzak and John Mullen, ordering all that PPE, the gowns, the 20,000 masks, 700 desks.
Yeah, and the other thing that I do want to mention is we're looking at increasing our custodial staff, and we've gotten the equipment, it's been ordered, the electrostatic sanitizers, so that we'll have the ability to pretty easily and efficiently sanitize each school each evening, which should make a lot of people feel more comfortable as well. So yeah, thanks for reminding me about that one. I think that's it for now.
Dr. Mealy, could you just repeat what you said about sanitizing the buildings on a nightly basis and how that process happens?
Yeah, so we've purchased equipment, and it's very effective. I think I'm not sure of the numbers. I think it was a 15 micron. So it actually does a great job of coverage, but it also doesn't. It dries fairly quickly. So that'll allow us to disinfect between when we get to it. If we have AM, FM, AM, PM at the kindergarten to go in and disinfect in between as well. But these machines are very effective and have a high coverage area. So we'll have one for every school, and we'll put together the team that will go through and disinfect each evening.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, who next up? In-person, typical day of school. I think one of the challenges when you look at a typical day of school and the benefits is, we have students in every day on their typical schedule. We're getting instruction. It's coming back to some normalcy, defined times in all content areas. There's more opportunity for the SEL supports and relationships. There's increased opportunity to build, classroom and school culture. build technology skills in learning, which would foster a smoother transition to remote learning if necessary. Some of the considerations is the impact of large cohorts. I mean, it's no surprise to anyone that we have a large high school. We have a middle school that we've submitted to the MSBA because of class size and trying to reduce that. Physical distancing concerns and disinfecting playground structures at recess. Stamina concerns with elementary students expected to wear masks all day. Bus transportation, which we'll talk about a little bit more. Dr. Mealy will. So some of the challenges in running what would just be a normal school day become very difficult, and it will take not just quite feasible having everyone in the traditional manner, even with the safety precautions at this time. Dr. Goddard.
Thank you, Dr. Gilligan. Hi, everyone. So the first option that I'm presenting for kindergarten is the hybrid option. This would be a half-day program with an AM and PM cohort each day. Some of the benefits that we are really trying to work out is to get students physically in the building every single day. This, we would also be able to have, with the reduced numbers, the ability to have school sanitization in between the cohorts. And it would also reduce the number of students that are together in each classroom. We would then also be able to minimize our school transitions. Specials would be in the afternoon when the student, or in the morning when students are at home, so it would be remote. That way they would not have to transition into other building spaces or have staff transition into the classrooms to do those specialist classes. Having the students in every single day would give us the ability to create that school culture and that classroom culture that we all know is what helps our kiddos to do so well and to build those relationships. Having the students in every day would also allow for consistent routines and expectations, and for our youngest learners, that's extremely important. And then we would also have the ability to have teachers pre-teach some of the skills so that students could then take that home and do the extension pieces at home. It would also give us the ability to help build some of their technology skills. If we were to go remote at any time, we could help build the students' ability to do that. Again, for some of our students, it's their first time they've been in school, and so they need that extra support. And it would also allow for consistent daily feedback on learning for each student. Some of the considerations, obviously knowing that a midday student pickup or drop off is time consuming. It's also not ideal for childcare with families at work. Specials, again, would be remote, which is not ideal, but we do feel would be safe. And also it would reduce our time to implement some of our special education services for in-person. And then we did also discuss that we would really make an effort to make sure that our students with more significant complex needs would be prioritized to receive in-person instruction as much as possible, so potentially even during the full day if needed.
Dr. Goddard,
yes.
One of the challenges when you talk about in-person, based on the guidelines here in Massachusetts, the state has asked us to aim for 6-foot distancing, but they have a 3-foot distance that would be allowable under the current guidelines. In actuality, and Dr. Mealy could tell you, we could probably fit the 3-foot, and it's packed in. It's seat edge to seat edge, not the desk edge. And the one school that would be a real challenge just with the space-wise and the layout is we just physically couldn't fit those students in, even at the 3-foot mark. So.
Thank you, Dr. Gilligan. This is a sample of what a half-day kindergarten schedule could look like, working within the hours that we had last year. So our first group would arrive at 8:20, and then their dismissal time would be between 10:45 and 11. We'd have between 11 and 11:45 for teacher lunch and break with cleaning, and then also a teacher prep and collaboration time, as well as additional time for cleaning. So that would give us an hour and a half to clean in between the cohorts. And then the second group would arrive at 12:35, and their dismissal time would be between 3 and 3:15. So that's the hybrid schedule and the hybrid presentation. The third option we have is the remote. Again, the benefits, health and safety protocol for students and staff. We would limit the amount of contact between students and staff. Transportation wouldn't be a consideration, and it would have, we would make sure the schedule is flexible so that we could have a blend of the synchronous and asynchronous learning with clear times for teachers to check in with their students. Some of the considerations with this model, there's a lack of social emotional well-being of students because there's a lack of the face-to-face interaction, which again, building of relations, it's far easier to do that in person. Childcare for families is another consideration with the remote model, as well as access and equity with technology and accessing Wi-Fi, and then accessing challenges for students with disabilities as well. Model that we have for a kindergarten day would look something like this if we were to have the half-day cohorts. Again, the teacher would have live morning meeting each day with group 1 and then group 2. Then there would be live group check-ins where small groups of students would sign up for each of those times. So there'd be 6 different groups from each of the different cohorts. In between the times that students are not checking in with their teachers, there would be the presentation of the materials for them to do on their own, like we had in the spring, where there's the videos for each subject area and the students work on those themselves. Then there would be the lunch and prep for teachers, and then a closing meeting for both of the cohorts, as Nikki had alluded in her presentation, really making sure that we're addressing those SEL needs and having that morning check-in and the afternoon check-in.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Goddard. I think it's important just to note, having the ability to go from, being in school in a hybrid even, or if at some point we were able to get in full person, I think it's important to note having the ability to pivot seamlessly into remote learning is critical, and I think we're poised to do so.
All right, so moving right along to elementary. Dr. Gilligan, you can hear me, right?
Just fine, Joe. This is Joe Clark, from the principal of the Franklin School.
Yes, thank you, sir. So the hybrid model that the elementary team has developed is one that looks at having half of our students in each day. The one that Dr. Gilligan referenced earlier in the slideshow, where cohort A would come in Monday, Thursday, cohort B would be in on Tuesday, Friday, and all students would be remote on Wednesday. Some of the benefits of a model like this are obviously with fewer students in our cohort, we can maintain about up to that 6-foot distance required by the medical professionals that we're looking at. And also the model that we're looking at, and I'll flip to the slide right now for a second. As you can see, at the end of the day, we're looking at having a virtual closing circle. So even though cohort A is in person all day on Monday, at the end of the day Monday, we would have a virtual closing circle after the students have gone home with both cohorts. Now this would enable all students to have direct face-to-face contact with their teacher all day, each day, and with their classroom peers. And that was something that we felt was vitally important for our students to be able to have while maintaining the health and safety of all of our students and staff. The classroom routines could be more easily, there's opportunities to make it more easily learned by our students, so that in the event that we are able to go back to more of a full in-person structure, we would be able to move into that model much more fluidly, as all students would have the routines. The elementary school structure naturally allows for fewer transitions during the day, so we do believe that we will be able to maintain safety for our kids for the entire time that they're there. And it is a shortened day, as we'll get into in a minute when we look at that schedule again. But that afternoon whole class closing circle is really talking about being there in order to help our teachers and students collaboratively create a positive classroom culture. And that is something, if you look at any of the feedback from teachers, one of the biggest things that they talk about is, how are we going to make sure we get that culture that we're so accustomed to having in North Andover. And each classroom has that unique culture to it, and we want to make sure we honor that. And we really believe that through the afternoon meetings and the full day remote on Wednesday, where both cohorts will come together, we can accomplish that. The consistency of this schedule is definitely a benefit for families. And the early dismissal allows for more time in the afternoons to clean and sanitize each day. And finally, the Wednesday full remote day will mirror what our remote proposal will be as well, so that every Wednesday, the students are going to be experiencing what they would experience on a daily basis in the event that we have to transition at any point during this year to a full remote model.
Joe, could you talk a little bit just about, why the Monday, Thursday cohort, the Tuesday, Friday cohort, all together Wednesday, and, across all levels other than kindergarten, that would most likely be split by alphabet depending on number and who decides to attend school. But can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Jackson were some of the people at the forefront of developing kind of this structure. And we had gone back and forth at the elementary level, actually, between having cohort A Monday, Tuesday, cohort B Thursday, Friday, because we were looking at pros and cons of consistency of 2 days in a row. But what we really liked about this model of Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday is that it allows for fewer days between the time a student is physically in person with their teacher. It gives some flexibility. And then also, as we get to the schedule in a minute, you'll see how this structure really impacts in a positive way teaching and learning. And then the full day remote Wednesday is at the elementary level really focused on bringing both cohorts together. So it will be synchronous mini lessons with some small group pieces along the way, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But it enables cohort A and cohort B to work collaboratively all day long, which they're unable to do on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. That answer your question, Dr. Gilligan?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest challenges that all levels face when in consideration of this as an initial recommendation is the challenges associated around young kids, adolescents with lunch and recess. So, that's why at all the levels we'd be talking about a grab and go lunch, and we'll go from there. So I think that if you want to add anything on that, you certainly could.
I think we'll get to that in just a minute.
Okay.
So some of the considerations we did have to make is obviously if we're shortening the actual day where students will be in person in favor of having that double cohort closing circle at the end of the day, which we really feel is important, obviously a shortened day impacts the length of the content blocks that we could have each day. So that's a consideration that we had to keep in mind, and we will continue to keep in mind. Fewer students are getting in-person interaction with the teacher each day. Obviously, we've built in this structure that every student will see their teacher and be able to speak to them, but there is a difference of being in person versus virtual, and we understand that, and that's a consideration that we're definitely keeping. Fewer days of instruction will impact the breadth of content. Smaller cohorts, even though we're trying to build in those processes, we understand it's going to be more challenging for teachers and students to collaboratively build that culture. And then with a shortened school day, after school care is absolutely something that we have to consider for families as we're moving forward. And then we'll make sure that, like Dr. Goddard referenced, students with significant and complex needs will be prioritized for receiving in-person instruction. So this is what our weekly schedule will look like, and you can see how on Monday and Thursday, cohort A is in person and cohort B is virtual. Tuesday and Friday, it flips and cohort A is virtual and cohort B is in person. So we have just right down the list, arrival and hand washing right off the bat. We're already starting to build our structures of how that's going to look and how we're going to maintain safety and guidelines around all of these things. Then an in-person morning meeting. Then when we get down into the content, you can see we have content block 8.1. So the reason why we listed it that way is to illustrate how that's cohort A getting essentially lesson 1. Tuesday, cohort B would also get lesson 1. Now, when we all come together virtually, we have this great opportunity to bring cohort A and cohort B together, and we can teach them in a synchronous way. And I'll get to that when we get to the remote proposal as well. But in a synchronous way, lesson 2, and we can move on to lesson 3 on Thursday for A and 3 on Thursday for B. So the continuity of teaching is nice. And that's what I was kind of alluding to earlier when we were talking about, you know, the Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday schedule that Dr. Gilligan had asked about. So you can see as we move down the day, dismissal is at 1 o'clock. And we allow them to, you know, we're working with food services and state and in order to get grab and go lunches so that we're making sure that students are getting fed and they're able to bring that lunch home, have lunch, take a break. And anytime they take a break in a remote environment, we're encouraging and recommending that that break happen away from a device. And then finally, all cohorts, every day, doesn't matter who was in person or who was virtual, both cohorts come together for a virtual closing circle with their teacher. So that's what our hybrid model is looking like. When we think about the remote, all of our benefits and considerations echo what Dr. Goddard said earlier. You know, transportation is not in consideration. It limits cross-contamination. Our considerations are childcare for families, the lack of face-to-face interaction, and especially for our youngest learners who are reliant a lot of that, we wanted to think about our hybrid model and how can we get that face-to-face as much as we can. And obviously the remote, we can get face-to-face, but it's through the computer screen. And I think we can all agree that that's not exactly the same. So a remote schedule. Now this is what every day would look like Monday through Friday in a remote world if we ended up going to a model like that for any reason. And this is also what our Wednesday will look like in our hybrid model. And as you can see, we have a synchronous morning meeting, a synchronous mini lesson for each of the content block workshops, followed by the remainder of that workshop block being independent work asynchronously, but also with opportunities to work in collaborative groups synchronously with the teacher. Just as we're trying to think about how can we make this workshop model be as close to a workshop model in person as we can get, but in a virtual way. We built in a snack and movement break, especially for our youngest learners. And we want to make sure, and you can see it's in there, it's recommended that this time be away from a device. The content blocks, the related arts would be synchronous for the classrooms. Again, lunch break, away from a device, and we come up for the end of the day. And all of this synchronous. And you can see that that really is the main difference between the spring and what we're doing, what we're proposing this year for our remote schedule, is that there's a lot of synchronous mini lessons where students have the opportunity to interact with their teacher. And then even in that independent work, just like in a workshop model you would see in any classroom in a traditional setting, they're going to be able to work with small groups with the teacher.
Great. Next up, Mr. Gonsalves from the North Andover Middle School.
I believe Mr. McDevitt has a question.
Can I ask a quick question, Mr. Clark?
Doing the mic while I'm presenting is a little tricky. Absolutely, Mr. McDevitt, go for it.
Control D helps to mute and unmute.
Control D, you taught me that. That's right, I forgot about that one.
So when the students are remote, are they able to ask questions, hear other classmates? How is that?
So are you asking when they're remote in the remote model, like every day? Or the Wednesday?
Wednesday or the remote model? Like, you know, if we were to go full remote, because so much of, you know, learning is the kids being able to ask questions and get them answered. And if it's a one-way feed, it's useless.
No, so I would imagine the synchronous mini lessons would be structured similarly to any mini lesson you would see. Our teachers are very skilled at working through those mini lessons and making it a collaborative environment. So now all students would be on board at that time, and there would definitely be time for questions. You know, the teachers would be interacting with the students, asking students to share, asking students, you know, probably gauging, you know, we do fist of five a lot, or thumbs up, thumbs down, and trying to determine where they are. And then when you get to that second portion, which is a larger portion than the mini lesson, when you get to the second portion of that workshop model, that's where the teachers can work with a smaller group of students. And that would be a smaller collaborative group where the students will be working together and with the teacher.
Okay. All right, thank you.
No problem. I guess anything else before I confirm and put the presentation back on?
Yeah.
I think it's important just to note, these are sample schedules. We put in times as examples. And, you know, if Cheryl Bozak's here, or Brian LaGrasse, the Director of Public Health, or Nurse Ibbotson, Carolyn, you know, I think two of the important parts of talking about a cohort too is, particularly at elementary and middle school, you have the ability to keep groups much more cohorted. You know, high schools across many places, there has to be some movement. So I didn't know if you could just weigh in on that piece.
Hey, Dr. Gilligan, it's Brian LaGrasse. How are you today?
I'm well, Brian. Good to talk to you again today.
Thank you. Yeah. So the piece about cohorting and having students stay together, it's for contact tracing and to limit exposure. Obviously, that makes it easiest for us as a public health department to, if there's a positive case, then we can work from there and isolate that particular cohort to protect everybody else around them. And that's basically what it comes down to.
Thank you, Brian. And that's one of the benefits of the, you know, the early dismissal without the lunch and the recess, particularly at those younger levels. Okay. George.
Hi, this is Caroline.
Oh, Caroline. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Caroline Ibbotson, the public health nurse. I just wanted to comment also on that same point that Brian was talking about regarding the cohorts. So the only thing I was thinking of with the Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday groups was, in the event that, say, a teacher were to test positive, we look at the 2 days prior to when they test positive or when they become symptomatic. So if they're in the classroom on Monday and Tuesday with two different groups of kids and they test positive on Wednesday, now we're quarantining the entire class. Whereas if they, and granted, we don't know when they could ever test. They could test on Thursday, and you know, but that case scenario, if they test positive on Wednesday or Saturday, you're limiting the amount of kids that are exposed by having them kind of grouped together Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday. So that was the only thing I was thinking. I know there's no guarantee of like the time frame of it, but that was, from an infection point of view, that was something that kind of caught my eye with that schedule.
Yeah, and I think it's you know, in terms of particularly the sanitization piece and the educational piece, and I think having the ability to you know, cut the class in half to that 6 feet, twice of what DESE recommends, is critical. So,
Dr. Gilligan, before you have George go to the middle school, the feasibility study, one important factor I forgot to mention was the guidance we finally got from the state regarding transportation and buses and how many students can go on a bus. And it finally came out that they'll only allow one student per seat unless they're siblings. Siblings can sit together. So that limits us to 25 students per bus, which is very important, because what it means is we will not be able to offer paid busing to start the year if we are in this hybrid model, because we can only transport the 25 and we only have enough buses to do so with the current hybrid model we have. So I think it's important for people to know that those who live 2 miles or more from the school and are in the 6th grade or lower will be continue to be transported by bus, but we will not be able to offer busing for those who live closer than 2 miles or in 7th through 12th grade.
Thank you, Dr. Mealy. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Dr. Gilligan. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present the middle school schedule to you. After much work with many wonderful people since school got out, learning a lot about the guidelines, and we quickly identified that in order to keep health and safety at the forefront, we were going to have to significantly limit the number of students that were in the school at any given time. You have to get the kids into the school and you have to get them out of the school. And that presents quite a challenge when you have all 1,109 kids at the middle school. So having a cohort model of half the students on Monday and Thursday and the other half on Tuesday and Friday, that slide is incorrect. That will greatly impact our ability to keep kids safe and social distance. So what we are proposing is that our students, half of the students come to school, like I said, on Monday and Thursday, and the other half on Tuesday and Friday. Our school day, like the elementary school and like you will hear from the high school, is a shortened school day. We want to maximize the amount of time kids are in school, but dismiss them at a time so that they can still have lunch and go home. And we're still working out many of the minor details, exactly how they get lunch and how they order lunch and all those things. But those are small potatoes compared to what we've already done so far. And I'm confident we can do that. Our regular 7-period day, because it is going to be a shortened day, would actually be a 6-period day. Students would attend 5 of their classes on team, and that 6th class would be a related arts class. When we get to the schedule, I'll show you how we broke that up. Wednesdays, as you heard from the elementary, and you will hear from the high school as well, are remote learning days. We, in order to be nimble, that's a word you'll hear a lot in this new reality, and in order to be flexible, we need to be prepared for anything. And one of those things is to be prepared for the possible remote learning environment that we could have to go into. So why not be ready for that? Because our kids are broken in half, we need opportunities for them to be together. So our Wednesdays is a remote learning day, and I'll be talking about that shortly. It's an opportunity to have the entire, let's do it now. This is good. Thank you, Mr. Clark. So again, Mondays and Thursdays, one cohort, Tuesdays and Fridays, another cohort. We are going to begin the day with staggered arrivals, reporting directly to your cohort. We'll plan breakfast, no worries, we can make that happen. Kids are not going to be using their lockers. We're trying to limit exposure to surfaces. They'll have their own space 6 feet apart from everyone else in their homeroom, and they can have their backpacks in there. And we have homeroom, morning announcements we'll still do, and we'll have a class meeting. It's really important that we check in with every kid every morning, see how they're doing, get ready for the day. And then we'll go through the 6 classes. We added a little bit of time. These are suggested times. We added a little bit of time to period 4 because we want kids to be able to, nice family joke. We want kids to be able to have a snack during period 4. So we borrowed a little bit of time from every period so they can have a snack in their room. They're already 6 feet apart, so they can still take off their masks and have their snack and have that mask break too. And then they're going to return to homeroom at the end of the day, and that is how we're going to do our staggered departure as well. But it's also an opportunity, yet again, to check in with kids, see how they're doing. We're going to plan lots of SEL activities with our students. Lots of training is forthcoming. And then we dismiss our students. Our staff get to eat. And then everything is remote. So those kids who were home that day, so let's call it a Monday, that's the B group. When do they get to have that contact with staff? So we've scheduled an afternoon with them. So in the afternoon, they will have a class meeting with their team. They will have one of their related arts, and they will have check-in time with teachers and getting their work done as well. We also will be making morning announcements public to them. We would like to also create a schedule so that our kids who are home are still following a routine. They are watching morning announcements like everyone else. They are completing their work during the day, and they have a check-in with their teachers at that. Go ahead, Andrew.
Sorry, we're not seeing the presentation anymore. So I think for anyone who's following along online, it's everything you just said was very difficult to imagine. So I do apologize, but if we could show the presentation, that would be really helpful.
So Joe is showing it now. Can everybody see it now?
Yeah, it's back now.
Okay.
Back now.
So I was trying to fill dead air. Bad radio is nothing. So I wanted to make sure I was talking that whole time. But now that this slide is back up, as you see, Mondays and Thursdays is Group A, Tuesdays and Fridays is Group B. Everyone's remote on Wednesdays. Our kids, when they arrive, we have, every school has a working group. And our working group has been focused on operations and health and safety this week. We've looked at every conceivable way to get kids in, lots of planning, lots of signs, lots of that will be going into starting the year. But essentially, when kids start the day, we'll plan breakfast for those who want it as well, but they go directly to their cohort rooms, and they will stay in those rooms for all of their classes except related arts. So teachers will be traveling to the kids. They will not have lockers. Again, you heard that. They'll have all their bags with them in those rooms. We extended a little bit of time in period 4. We borrowed from the other 5 classes so that we can schedule a mask break and snack time. And then at the end of the instructional day, they return to their homeroom. We'll have a class meeting. As you see, those are in green. The instructional schedule's in like a blue, maybe a periwinkle. And then in that class meeting, we check in with the kids, and then we stagger their dismissal. Everyone has lunch. And then those students who are home, they are Group B students. They have remote classes in the afternoon. So they have a related arts class, which will be remote. And they'll also have a check-in with the team, which is fluid and flexible. I want my teachers on each team to be able to use that time how best they believe it needs to be used. It could be a check-in, it could be reminders, it could be breakout small groups, it could be remediation, intervention, and support. It can be anything. And that way, every single student is getting a check-in with staff every single day. And then on Wednesdays, it's a remote schedule. Joe, would you mind going to the next slide? So obviously, there's benefits to this model. Spacing is the additional benefit. When it comes time to making the groups, I can imagine a lot of work will be going into that. We want siblings to be attending school on the same days. The way the district is proposing these schedules, we're going to be able to do that. And our students will remain in their cohorts at NAMS, and the teachers will travel to them. We want 6 feet at all times in all classes. That is our priority. We're going to try to make that happen. And then the afternoon allows us to check in with those kids who were learning basically on their own during the day. And of course, students with significant and complex needs, we're going to prioritize them to attend in-person instruction as much as possible. Not 2 days a week, 4, maybe even 5 days. There are some drawbacks. Obviously, kids aren't in school every day. That's drawback number 1. Drawback number 2, they're being dismissed at 12:25. We recognize that. We also recognize that the way this schedule works, they can't take 4 related arts classes over the course of 2 days. They're going to take the same 2 related arts classes for half the trimester, and then they're going to switch to the other 2 related arts classes for the second half of the trimester. Thinking about that from a student's perspective and a teacher's perspective, I'm not sure it's a challenge. I think that might be a strength. Teachers can focus on fewer kids. Kids can focus on fewer classes. Not 9 classes, but 7 instead. And then after the end of the halfway point of the trimester, another 2 new classes. And obviously, special education services, it'll be a combination of in-person and remote. That's also a challenge, but we've done it and we can do it. And then the next slide, please. Can you go to the next slide, Mr. Clark? And can you, so obviously not having school on Wednesdays, well, we have school, students aren't at school. That allows for deep cleaning. Students and staff will have the opportunity to really try out, improve the remote learning experience in preparation for a possible future school closure. Teachers get to combine their entire classes, and they'll have an opportunity in those classes to present material, check in with students, make it collaborative, meet with individuals, meet with small groups. Students can even work collaboratively in their own small groups, working on something and checking in with teachers. We have the time and the ability to really improve remote learning, and we're excited to do that. One of the categories that you've seen presented is teaching and learning, and that is our bread and butter. That is what we do, and we're excited to have those conversations about how to improve it. And if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Clark, the next schedule, this would be the remote learning schedule, suggested times. Unlike the in-person schedule, we don't have the class meeting first. We're going to have that after a couple of class periods. That's intentional. We want the kids to wake up. We want them to be activated, and then we do the class meeting and check in. If you do it first, you know, some kids might sleep in a little bit because it's not their academic subject just yet. So we want to put that third. You'll see a similar plan from the high school. Now, this just says team subject, team subject, team subject. There's still going to be the ability on the part of the teachers in the school to determine what subjects are taught when. In middle school, we try to rotate our schedule as much as possible, so kids aren't always going to math class first thing in the morning. We want to spread that around and have change. So we'll be looking at that as we go, but it's not something we necessarily have to do right now. And it's the same thing with related arts. We usually switch related arts times after every trimester. So that's a conversation to be had. So I'm happy to take any questions anyone has.
So we have been going through the presentation without a lot of questions. I think it would probably be wise for us to finish up going through the presentation with high school, I assume is next. And then we'll come back to questions at the end.
Sounds great, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, Chet Jackson, high school principal. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. Thanks. First, want to say thank you to Dr. Gilligan, Ms. Marks, and Dr. Mealy specifically. I know they mentioned a little bit at the start, but they put together a great deal of hard work to put this presentation together and put a lot of weeks in with the high school principals, gathering feedback from the Summer Institute, teachers, parent groups, and all facets of the community. So as a community member, I just want to mention it's great to see everyone's input valued as we kind of work our way through this. At the high school level, I'll echo a little bit of what George and Joe specifically said at the start. 2 cohorts, cohort A and cohort B. Again, Monday, Thursday, and Tuesday, Friday for cohort B, with everyone in on Wednesday together. I do think for having everyone together for that Wednesday allows for teachers to see all their kids, participate in a live synchronous remote learning environment, and not just half the class. Will help with that community feel in a high school course. All students will learn remotely from home on days that they are not present in school. I think the major benefit of our hybrid model at the high school is that our students will have an opportunity for a live connection with a teacher every day, either in person or during a synchronous remote session. On the Monday, Tuesday, Joe, just to go back that slide, please, for 1 second. That second bullet there, on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, our students that are learning remotely will have a live synchronous connection with at least 2 teachers. So one thing at North Andover High School, different than other high schools, is we run 5 periods, not 7 or 8 blocks like other high schools do. So I think in our hybrid model, we're able to get all 5 classes for each cohort to meet, and then in the afternoon, allow teachers to touch base with their kids that are home remotely in a synchronous way. I think one of the lessons learned from the springtime is that we do have to build in some synchronous time during our blocks. And it's very important to us to be able to start with a framework that will allow us to touch base with students, whether it's in person or via remote in a synchronous way live every day. So I think that's one advantage of our model there. Benefits, given the number of students attending the high school, having half the students in school would allow for recommended social distancing in adherence to health and safety guidelines. Obviously, making every effort to keep siblings in the same group will be a priority. Our lunchtime in-person dismissal allows for high school students to support the care of siblings at both the middle and elementary school. One thing when we get to our grid or spreadsheet, you'll notice our time is 7:50 to 11:50 for in-person. The middle school was 7:35 to 12:25. I think one of the things with Dr. Mealy mentioned with the busing that we have to make sure we do is allow for some help in a community fashion for our students to be able to support transportation for siblings as well, especially not having the buses. I think having a cohort A and cohort B model, when we get to parking, shockingly, I have gotten a lot of emails about student parking already with parents and community members concerned. If we do run the hybrid model, having half the students in will allow us to really maximize our parking space and accommodate all drivers. So there's a silver lining to that that I think could be beneficial for the whole district. Also, if we have students that can support programming in the afternoon that may not have other jobs or other things that they have to take care of, they could also be available to support our middle school in elementary school students. In-person students will have additional time for homework and family. Obviously, if you're out early, you're going to have some time in the afternoon. So at a high school schedule where we're trying to go in and really maximize that learning, they'll have some time for that homework afternoon where they may have time to do more fun things in their lives if our health is still good across the state. Obviously, the Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday limits the days without in-person to 3 or 4 in a calendar week. Also, when we threw this idea by the teachers as well to look at and where we put our teacher collaboration blocks when we look at the spreadsheet as well, it's a better option for pacing for our students and teachers with both cohorts possibly moving at the same 2-day pace before and after the remote learning day on Wednesday. One of the things that we want to do is really set up our teachers to look at those blocks and choose their best practices with our kids. Obviously, we want all our teachers teaching the same course and all the students to have that same education regardless of who their teacher is. We want them to be able to work with us in maximizing that learning environment. Considerations: not all our students would attend school in person each day, each week. Our students would be dismissed at lunchtime on the days they are attending school in person. This could be a benefit or it could be a challenge to a family, and we do recognize that. Our students with significant and complex needs will be prioritized for receiving in-person instruction. Dr. Goddard mentioned this to lead us off. And I think whether our students with significant and complex needs, some of those may be special ed students, but we want to prioritize getting them in the building for Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. One of the things that we are all very sensitive about in our strategic plan is the equity for all students. And one of the things when our students didn't have access to all the Chromebooks that are going to be ordered, thanks to Mr. Grant and Dr. Gilligan, and hopefully having internet access is to make sure all our students have equity and access to the materials they need, because we don't want the divide between our students with access to really get so big with our students without access. We don't want a divide. We want all our students to learn and have that access to learn. So it's one thing that we're definitely keeping in consideration as we move forward with our plans. For the high school remote model, one benefit could be, depending on what we did on the Wednesdays, if we could have a deeper cleaning for all our classrooms in the middle of the week, if it's so decided. Our students and staff have the opportunity to implement, follow, and improve the remote learning experience in preparation for a possible future school closure. Obviously, this is our schedule of hybrid would be a great transition to remote learning. And it would be one where they'd actually be able to make a connection to students prior to us going to remote. One of the challenges we had in trimester 3 at the high school when we mix up our kids is that a lot of our teachers didn't meet our students. Hopefully we'd be able to start our school year in this hybrid model and allow for those connections to at least start to be made so we could enhance those relationships. Our teachers would also have an opportunity to work with students individually or in small groups. One of the benefits in the remote environment with the different technology is our teachers have been actively searching their own PD. We'll be able to hopefully provide some additional PD the first 2 weeks when we get back here. And there's so much you can do now, putting kids in small groups, having them collaborate, having them work in pairs that I think would be a great benefit to our teachers to kind of have that PD in advance in case we had to go the remote route. Obviously for our blocks, we want to have a synchronous component of all of our teaching blocks, but we also want the teachers to have input as to what that does look like. We want to be able to grade, we want to be able to take attendance, and also hold our students accountable. But we also want to make sure everyone has access. So it's a very difficult balance, but we look forward to the challenge of educating all of our students to the highest capacity. All right, and as you can see in the times, just to guide everyone through, again, Monday and Thursday are cohort A, and Tuesday and Friday are cohort B in person. I often refer to it as the ABAB model, with us being remote on Wednesday. Students, when they enter the school, will go to their period 1 class for 7:50, and they're in person 40 minutes for all 5 periods when they are in person with their teachers. We have a lunch dismissal at 11:50, and also we're going to be in need of teachers in our hallways. As we've kind of gone through and started our talks at the building level teams, we need our teachers an ability to kind of help manage our students. So it probably will allow for us to need a block to have all our teachers have their prep, their daily prep, after the dismissal time. So one of the sample schedules you see there has a 12:15 to 12:55 teacher prep. A couple days a week, we have a collaboration block for teachers. You'll see them on Monday and Tuesday. And then we transition to the remote synchronous live by teaching block. It's periods 1 and 2 on Monday and Tuesday. Again, if you're in person on Monday, the people that are remote will have a live check-in for 2 classes on Monday and Tuesday and 3 classes on Thursday and Friday. So a little change in ours. There's not the expectation that our students in school have to go home and then be on remote. It's for our students who in our cohort that are already remote. So I think, again, excited to come up with a hybrid with many different people and a lot of different input that allows for that live connection for a student with at least 2 teachers every day. It's something that was missed and that our teachers specifically missed with our kids as well. And we can go to the remote day, next slide. Our Wednesday remote day mirrors if we were to go full remote, as did a lot of the other schools. You will see 50-minute blocks for our 5 periods with an advisory group. for a half an hour, where we could do lots of various different things, our character strong in character education, continue to have those conversations around equity, diversity, social justice, even have time for our other push-in services if there's any guidance needs. Some of that stuff can be done on the remote end of it too, but we could planfully also do some things during that 30-minute block if needed. But we do recognize the need for having some additional time, especially if we're fully remote. Right.
Ms. Marks?
Yes. So the Remote Learning Academy, and this can be a little bit confusing because of the word remote that we have just used in all of our presentations, and then the word remote in the Remote Learning Academy. So in the three models that were already presented, that is what the state is asking us to talk about: in-person, hybrid, and remote for those students who are going to return back to the North Andover Public Schools and are willing to be there in person, whether that's full-on in person or in person in the hybrid model. That group needs to be a consistent group because, as all of the principals have mentioned, that may be fluid. Students may be hybrid and have an in-person component for a day, 1 week, and then all of a sudden, if there is a case of a COVID-19 and we have to do some contact tracing and we have to quarantine members of that class, they have to be able to go into a remote learning situation. So that is a steady group of students whose parents are comfortable sending them back into the North Andover schools to move fluidly between those three models. There may be families or students who are not comfortable returning to the North Andover schools. They may have compromised health systems. They may have family members with compromised health systems. They may have other reasons, concerns about the virus and spread of the virus. So they would be offered an option to attend what the state is calling a remote learning academy. So that will be complete virtual instruction. At this point, that is still a work in progress. One of the things we have to find out from our families is how many students would be engaged in this program. We also have to talk to our staff, just as we have students or families who may have concerns or health concerns with having them return to the school setting. We may have some staff members that have the same concerns. So part of our next step of work is to see which families are not choosing to send students back into the schools to move fluidly, potentially between those three models, and what staff members may not be able to return to school due to health concerns. And once we have that information, we will be able to then look at how many students we need to serve, what grade levels they're at, what kind of curriculum we need, what kind of coursework we need. If it's just a few families and we have some teachers that are also not able to return to school, there may be a match there, there may not. We can certainly not ask a first grade teacher to teach a chemistry class. So it's really gonna depend on what sort of courses are needed. So that is a big piece of work that still needs to be done. But that is an option. We do have an option, and we are required to educate those students who will not be returning back into the North Andover Public Schools. The Department of Education is in the process of securing contracts, they said earlier this week, with 2 potential learning management systems. We have also talked to some other people. So for example, I'm just going to use high school as an example, because I look at chemistry as one of those courses that not everybody can teach. So if we had a course like that somebody needed to take, we would have access to some virtual experts in those areas, people who are certified as a Massachusetts teacher of chemistry, will teach the Massachusetts state standards for those students. The state cannot release that information yet, as they're still working on those contracts. So as you can see, this piece is really kind of the next step in what we have to figure out in terms of who are students and staff, what are their needs going to be, and then how are we going to be able to best meet those. And that's it.
Marcy.
Thanks. Thank you, everyone. And similar, like I just to thank everybody for all the hard work and the presentations. I have been part of a lot of those meetings and kind of sit in the background and shout reminders in regard to special education guidance. I think as these plans evolve and take shape, we're going to continue to, as a special education department, shift our planning for the 700 or so active IEPs that we have in district. As I'm sure people can imagine, we're trying to do the same thing. The expectation from the state is that we're going to provide a free and appropriate education, which means that students in the district are going to receive all the services that are on their current IEP. So it's a little bit of a square peg in a round hole when it comes to hybrid learning. But we're going to be creative. We're going to be collaborative. We're going to be speaking to families. There are building-based teams going on that have special education representation. We are brainstorming as a special education team of volunteers. So a lot of the work has been happening, but we certainly have a lot more work to do, again, as these plans evolve. I do want to make just a quick explanation about when the state talks about prioritizing complex and high needs students. They are talking about a specific group of students, and that's a categorization that's based on a student's IEP. So when they say high needs, students that are on educational plans are categorized based on time out of the inclusion setting, either low, moderate, or high. So students who are high need are outside of the general education curriculum greater than 60% of the school day. So that's what they're talking about when they talk about prioritizing high need students. That is by no way the start and end of our conversation about providing services for our special education students. Those are students who certainly we know for sure have had significant difficulty accessing remote learning, for a variety of reasons, whether they're non-ambulatory, don't have the appropriate communication skills. I mean, the reasons could go on and on, but we have a lot of other students who have special education needs and accommodations, and general education students who struggle with remote learning. So that's a constant conversation that we're having, and I expect that's going to feel uncomfortable to a lot of people, to feel like, well, my child, my student has needs also, and we have to have plans for all students, and that's what we continue to do. So we're going to work creatively to look at scheduling, to look at timing, to look at those Wednesdays. We've been able to work in sort of difficult situations and adapt our practices. So we're going to continue to explore various opportunities. I think as a district, as a department, we have the capacity to be creative, and we certainly have a leadership and support from building-based leadership to allow us to be creative. So it is going to definitely be a work in progress. And another point, just to think about for that, pieces that we learned from remote learning, of the pieces that we can do better, how we offer students that on 504 plans, how we offer them their accommodations. Well, we've had a lot of conversations about this expectation that students are going to know what they don't know, and a lot of times they don't know what they don't know. So how we have some more direct contact with a larger group of people, which people have spoken about in their presentations. So that contact time with teachers is going to be an important piece of this as well. Another piece of the conversations that we want to have is that in this remote, in the hybrid model, we're looking at smaller class sizes. That's going to have a significant impact on the ability for a lot of students to learn. So these are the discussions that we'll be reaching out about on an individual basis to plan for the upcoming year.
Can I add something else too? When Marcy is talking about the high needs special education students, we also are prioritizing students who are English learners, especially if they are just beginning to learn the language. So all of the principals are aware of this. We will have by the end of next week the information on who those students that we are aware of at this point may be at what grades and what schools, and we may offer them more time in school than out of school, similar to some of the special needs students. And also those students who may be in some difficult situations. For example, there are, the economy has certainly been a challenge, and there may be families who have lost their homes and maybe in difficult situations like that. Certainly we will be paying attention to those students as well. So I just wanted to add that because the group of high needs or critical needs students does move beyond our special education students.
And I just want to add that we had great success with remote meetings. Again, similar to students, remote meetings did not work for some families. We are going to continue for reasons of really just space. It's difficult to socially distance in the conference rooms, which will most likely be classrooms moving forward. So we're going to ask that parents consider remaining in remote meetings. And we, which I do think a lot of, like I said, a lot of families did prefer, but we will absolutely make accommodations for parents who want to come into meetings. They will likely be the only ones to be able to come into the meetings, and the providers will continue to remote into those meetings. Again, just because of space and the amount of people that, as people who know, sit around those tables sometimes.
Great.
Any questions?
I think I'd just like to add, just for clarity, this is a lot of information to take in. And we put a document out today, and much like many districts, we've been asked to identify a model that we're leaning towards, or had a possibility to make happen for the start of school. A predominant model for elementary, middle, and high school, and that's what we need to submit tomorrow. At the same time, this is incredibly complex. The Department of Education has asked us to make it a priority to get as many kids back in school as possible at 3 feet. We find some real challenges with that in big classrooms. The amount of PD training, all the things that we need to do to prepare for something like that. This would be a model that would make a lot more sense, and that we could pivot between whether we could make a in-person comeback or had to go completely remote from a hybrid. I would also say that there's also the opportunity to phase this in over time. So the most important thing to me as superintendent of schools is that balance, and it's a delicate balance of what getting kids in school is a top priority, but weighing that balance with the health and safety, mentally and physical well-being of keeping staff and kids safe. And I would like to ask Cheryl and Brian or Nurse Ibbotson, if you would weigh in kind of where we are in Massachusetts with COVID-19. I know you guys meet regularly with DPH and DESE. Cheryl?
So as you know, Massachusetts is in better shape than most other states with the rate of COVID. But I also wanted to just talk about the thoughtfulness that was put in all these plans and the mitigation strategies that we're having in place. I mean, we will screen students and staff. They'll self-screen before they come to school. We're requiring masks. We're putting in, hand hygiene protocols, as well as the social distancing. And what's nice about the hybrid model is we are able to have the 6 feet, which is recommended, and to put the health and safety first by having all these mitigation strategies in place.
All right, thanks, Cheryl. Thanks, everybody. This is Brian from the Health Department. Just want to give you a quick little rundown. Mass is in a really good spot right now. As of yesterday, we only had 356 new cases in the entire state of Massachusetts, which is really good. North Andover is also doing very well as a town. We currently only have 5 active cases, which is extremely low. At the peak, back on June 1st, we had 126 active cases. So that's come way down. We've definitely flattened the curve. The mask wearing, the social distancing, the hygiene, everything we've been doing has been working and working extremely well, which is good. So all the things that I've seen from the plans from the superintendent are taking that into account. The 6 feet, the mask wearing, things like that are going to help keep everybody safe, which is really good. Um, I mean, lately Massachusetts has been doing extremely well. The numbers are extremely low. The testing capacity is really high right now, and they're doing between 10 and 16,000 tests per day in the state, which is definitely where we're doing extremely well. And definitely want to keep that going. So that being said, the stuff that we're looking at, the stuff we're doing is working locally and across the state and across the entire Northeast. So we're kind of setting the bar for the rest of the country that, as you know, is having spikes and are seeing their highest numbers to this point. I think by shutting down early and doing what we did, definitely helped all that. Where other states reopened too early, they didn't put these precautions in place, and they're experiencing the difficulties of that now. So moving forward, I think definitely working with the school department and Dr. Gilligan on everything going forward with the different schools. And if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask me anytime.
Great. Thanks, Brian. I know there could be a lot of questions. One of the things you'll notice in the plan that we've posted on the website at northandoverpublicschools.com is there is a section to ask questions. I'm sure there are a lot of questions, as there are many everywhere, about keeping kids safe, getting them the best education possible in this situation, and we are going to do that. Feel free to submit those questions, and we will get our group of experts from our department around to film with Brian Fasia next week and post live to answer as many of those questions as possible. The other piece is Mr. Grant wasn't here tonight. He had a root canal, so he was out this afternoon. But I think it's important to note that, you know, the consistency of the 1 through 12 model, keeping families together, having contact for kids in the afternoon, and that's not to say we're not exploring all options. I mean, Google Classroom, like many systems, will be our learning management system for all grades across the district. You know, and it can organize, as you know, content in all one place. All of our students have an email account. You know, we have different software packages, single sign-ins like Clever, Google Meet, Google Chat, but we're also looking at, you know, other packages. And in fact, one of the nice parts about meeting with superintendents, I do so with a few from on the South Shore weekly, but I also meet weekly with Andover, Lawrence, Methuen, Haverhill, and Drake. Is that we have a technology powwow scheduled between all of the different schools so that we can share, compare notes, look at all the different things possible as we prepare to head into the school year. So to wrap it up, you know, our job as a district is to present a plan that could be doable to DESE for tomorrow, and they're asking districts and school committees to vote on plans August 10th, and you know, there'll be a lot of refining, a lot of things going on, and certainly you know, this hybrid model with the training days or phased in, even with more time, seems to make the most sense for North Andover to get our kids in the right place and keep them and our staff safe. So.
Well, that was tremendous. I really want to thank everybody on the team. It's obvious that you've done a tremendous amount of work, and it was presented so positively, so encouragingly. It's really something. I noticed on one of the slides it said option 7, so I don't know what options 1 through 6 were, or if there were options 8 through 47. But when something says option 7, it's obvious to me there's been a lot of thinking that's happened. I'm sure my fellow committee members, like myself, have of pages of questions and notes. And it will only be fair to work our way through those as best we can. I don't know if we want to have each person give all their questions at once, or if we want to kind of go round robin, like ask 3 questions, and then we'll let the next person ask 3 questions, and the next person ask 3 questions. I think that would be my preference. I think it might be easier for each of us to get some information and maybe not overlap too many of the questions, or have the first person ask 57 questions, 32 of which were ours. So if that's agreeable to folks, I can only see on my screen Mr. McDevitt and Ms. Mabley. I saw Ms. Mabley gave me a thumbs up that that's an acceptable way, that we'll do 3 questions and go round robin until we've become exhausted or exhausted our questions. Is that acceptable to you, Mr. Teresi, that we go round robin in that way? Sure. If you spoke, I didn't hear you. David, is that acceptable to you?
Sure, I said yes.
Oh, thank you very much. Ms. Mabley, that's acceptable to you? Okay, I see a thumbs up. Ms. Vitsky Lynch, I can't see you, so you'll have to speak.
Yes.
Good, excellent. And Mr. McDevitt gave us a thumbs up. So we'll go in something like that order. People move around on my screen, so it's a little hard for me to keep the order exact. But I will start with Mr. Teresi, if you can give us some of your top questions. Three to start, and I'll try to keep count.
Well, Ms. Picard, thank you very much. I don't think I have specific questions, but the public knows we just got this late this afternoon as well, so we didn't have an advanced copy of this. So I don't want to ask real specific questions, though I'm sure as I glean over this over the next few days, and as I get, I'm sure, many emails and comments from parents, I'll have more questions. First of all, I definitely want to acknowledge, and I'm going to try to couch my words through my comments here. I want to really thank, and I do appreciate the work, Greg, that your team has put into this. I can only imagine. I mean, I was chair till just a month ago, and I saw and I witnessed the work that was input into this, especially from you leading this team. So I know everyone, the presentation that was just given over the last 2 hours, very comprehensive. I have been telling people that no matter what we do, we're not going to make anyone happy. There's no question about that. And I've been saying that for the last several weeks. And now that I've seen the plan, I'm not happy. Just be brutally honest about it. I have 2 elementary school kids, so I was definitely listening most intently when Joe was speaking. I do think that the plan, as it's presented here, doesn't have enough school time, in-school time. I don't know how a 2 working parent family does this as it's presented right now. And I know maybe this is going to get tweaked, as you said, Greg, but we are on a tight timeline, supposedly. I mean, I don't know what's so special about August 10th, except that's what DESE says. Quite frankly, I really don't care what DESE thinks. I think they've been disrespectful to all of us over the last several months about this, the lack of information. Very disappointed what happened on Monday night with going from 180 days to 170 days with no notification. I'm not going to ask you, I got to think this draft, this has a September 16th start date in now. Did that just happen on Tuesday because of what DESE and MTA did? These kids are going to be in school 2 days a week for 4 hours. They missed 3 months of school already. To me, on the surface, it's not enough. I can appreciate, Joe, what you said about the culture of schools that's important to keep, and I've witnessed what you've done at Franklin through your emails and your social media stuff, and I really commend that in all the elementary schools. But I can't imagine my kids getting dismissed at 1, coming home, and then trying to get them both on a virtual call again at 2, and I'd have to figure out who's going to be there to make sure they do that. So I have a very visceral reaction to this. I'm sure a lot of parents who are watching it tonight probably have a lot of it. I've already got 2 emails about it already with a lot of similar thoughts that I'm having right now. So I need to delve into this more, and I'm sure I'm gonna have more questions about it. But I think this August 10th, to me, it's an arbitrary deadline anyways. I think we need to spend some more time on this because we're gonna get a lot of feedback on it. But again, I don't want to disparage Greg, you and your team, because I know how hard they've worked on this. I really do that. But this just hit me for the first time, and I know what parents went through last spring. It's going to be the same thing. I mean, it's. Anyways, I think I've said what has come to my mind at first. So my first round robin, Ms. Picard, is over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Teresi. Ms. Vigitsky Lynch?
Are we limited to 3 questions first time around? Is that what you said?
I mean, I suggested 3 questions. If you have comments, relevant questions, or feelings or thoughts to share, like Mr. Teresi, I would welcome that.
All right. Well, I agree with everything David said, including I know how hard everybody worked to put this plan in. I'm disappointed that we only got it at like 4 o'clock today, and I was running around and I didn't have time to fully read it. I'm able to fully read it, so I'll probably have more questions when I do get that chance. But I guess I have a bunch, but I'll just take a couple now, I guess. What is the reason that everybody's home at lunchtime?
One of the pieces we looked at, Holly, so I think it's important, and it's important for folks to know, we looked at dozens and dozens of models, and that folks really, real strong push for bringing all of our students back, but at 3 feet. And when, I think being really gung-ho about the 3 feet and getting kids back into school, I was pretty excited that was the guidelines from the state of Massachusetts. And we strongly looked at, particularly at elementary, we realized the challenge, that piece. But at the end of the day, I can tell you, the superintendent of schools, when you get one piece of recommendation from DESE around those guidelines, and you have conflicting recommendations from the CDC or the WHO, it becomes a real challenge. So we know how hard this is. We know that this will not look like the spring, but at this point, we're asked to provide this, which way we would be leaning as a leadership team, with all of the input from these working groups, and with health and safety being the top priority. This is what we're looking at this time. As things can change over time, I do think over the course of August, you'll see more and more. But if you even just look at the website, our website, we've been preparing for a while, but if you look in the right side, they have DESE guidance, and it continues to come every Friday night, around 5 o'clock, in the form of more and more guidance, restrictions, things that we have to do. So it is, certainly the school committee does get to vote on this. This is a recommendation at this time that if it was feasible to bring people back with all of the training.
But I don't understand. So nobody's in school after 12. So
the challenge with lunch is, so one of the things, and I know you've been in schools, and when you have 24 kids in a classroom, and the ability to social distance and physically keep distance, and all of the sanitization that has to happen with manipulatives, with touch surfaces, with food restrictions. So, you can eat with a mask off 6 feet apart. We have looked at all of the mitigation strategies, decluttering all of the different components, and it's a big impact. This is just a draft recommendation. This is initial. But what I would say is, DESE had asked districts, and I know some had put out plans earlier. I think that we took a thoughtful process And they asked districts to, present right around this time and not widely discuss until August 10th. I didn't think that was prudent. I think parents need to know. We're very concerned about equity. We're very concerned about working parents. I know people are out of work, and this is not something that we as a team taking all this information in take lightly in the least bit. And we look forward to more feedback.
The next question is on the cohort days. So let's say the teacher, for example, what are the teachers in cohort B doing on cohort A days?
I could let a principal take it, but simply put, if you have two cohorts, you split the class in half. So you have them, you can present the content on Monday to cohort A, the same content on Tuesday, but you have much smaller groups, so you get you can make a lot of progress. Then on Wednesday, the class is united in a remote setting, all together, and then the same thing follows on the Thursday and Friday. At this time, based on the feedback, we thought it was really important that the cohort A, and on Monday, that the cohort B kids who were working remotely had contact, live contact with teachers. And that's why that's built in there. As I said, we're also investigating, other technologies and platforms, and we're working with other districts.
So it's the course, so the teachers are there Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. They're just teaching different kids in class on Mondays and Tuesdays?
In this model, Holly, they would be, the teachers would be working every day, so.
And then for the middle school, and to some extent the high school, the middle school, the kids who are in school on their cohort days have nothing in the afternoon. And in high school, they have an hour of instruction. And the kids who are not in school have just an hour and 25 minutes of remote learning on their remote days.
So Holly, it is not our intent that kids will have nothing when they're not in school. It's our intent that they will continue the learning after they're dismissed for lunch. They will have work to do. They will have assignments to complete. We will be drafting a schedule for the students staying home to follow. We can't mandate that per se, other than the virtual meetings, but we want as much routine as possible. And trust me, the teachers will make sure the kids have plenty to do on the days they're not in school. And the good thing about not having kids, for example, one of the models we looked at was coming to school on Monday and Tuesday or Thursday and Friday. And we thought that's way too many days not seeing your teachers. So teachers, when they dismiss kids on Monday, it's, remember, I'm going to see you tomorrow afternoon and we're going to be checking in on this. And Wednesday, we're doing virtual meetings, virtual classes. And when I see you live on Thursday, I expect this. So kids are going to have lots to do. No one's going to say, Mom, Dad, I finished my work. I have nothing left to do. Very doubtful.
Well, they may say it.
They will.
I just think I agree with David. This plan is very, very difficult for working families and parents who will eventually have to return to the office, or even if they don't, it's just, I just don't see how this works. And I don't think 8 hours a week in school is enough. But I'll save my other questions for either next meeting or another round.
Thanks, Holly. Andrew?
I have a list. Shocking. First, I think this is probably one of the most anticipated school committee meetings that we've had. And I know a lot of people are very closely monitoring and reading the email that went out earlier this afternoon, this evening, in preparation for this. There's a tremendous amount of work that has gone into this. And, I know we have a lot of questions. So I do want to recognize and thank all of the staff and the parents and administration who have spent tremendous time to try to come up with a plan that seems as equitable and fair as possible. I'm not even sure exactly where to begin with some of these. Some of these will be questions and some are going to be statements, and I'll try to be a little brief, and then I'll turn it over to Mrs. Mealy. there's a lot of questions that are here, Dr. Gilligan, that we've been asking throughout this that you're probably going to get an email. And I would hope that we are able to put a quick fact sheet together on the website. So we have that information readily available to, for parents, where they can just kind of jump in and get some answers to what those questions are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really going to reiterate the fact that, 8 to 10 hours of in-person in the classroom just seems very, very light from my perspective. I think that, when we locked down in March, the entire state locked down, and we had families who were all home and parents that were there, and they were able to help with children despite the fact that they might be working remotely. There are some parents who have now gone back to working outside the home. And so, to basically have children be home 3 days a week, in some cases unattended, with, you might have your oldest child, be relatively young and not able to do some of this on their own. I think that the impact that this places on them is very, very great. I recognize that we will be doing some busing for 6th grade and under. I think that creates a challenge and a logistical issue for some of the students that are going to be going to the middle school and the high school. I do appreciate the fact that, if I understood correctly, the middle school would start so that high school students could conceivably drop off a younger sibling at the middle school, and then be able to get over to the high school in order to do that. But I want to recognize as well that the teachers and the faculty and the staff as well. I mean, we very much pride ourselves on the number of North Andover residents who work in our schools. So they believe in our schools, they believe in our community. And if you are a teacher with young families or young children and a young family, I think that this has a very big impact on them as well. I'm going to kind of just have one last kind of thought here, and then I'll move it over to Mrs. Mealy for a little bit. I really hope that, and this would be probably a logistical Herculean effort here, but we really need to coordinate families for this as well. I mean, there are many families who have children at an elementary school, they are at the middle school, and they are at the high school. And if we are not providing busing for some of this, I don't understand how a parent is going to be able to drop off somebody at Franklin, hit the middle school, hit the high school if they're not old enough to drive, and then turn around and come back and, oh, by the way, possibly work as well so that they can put food on the table. I think that that's a challenge. I think that I'm going to say it, I've got a driver on a permit right now. I think this is going to lead to things with students with JOLs who are not supposed to be, being somewhat forced to take friends into a car, which is illegal. And that's going to be a challenge. And I think that I think that that's a really big issue. Transportation to get these students in and out of school concerns me. So I've got a whole other list, but Mrs. Mealy, I'll pause for you.
Andrew, I would just say, Dr. Mealy will continue to work on the transportation issue. It's a big concern to us as well. At the same time, with the restrictions on the buses and the availability of buses throughout, it does pose those challenges, and it's the challenges here, like many communities. So, Ms. Mealy.
Thanks. So I'll start by saying some different things, just because my colleagues have said a lot of the similar things already, and I'll try to channel some other people's questions. In reading all of the reports that came back from all the parent groups and things like that, we've seen complete opposite desires expressed, right? Complete opposite desires. So, as much as my colleagues have said, like, this is not enough time in school, there's an entire cadre of people who are like, I can't believe you're expecting me to send my kid to school a couple days a week. That's crazy. So I think that's what we all are acknowledging that we're dealing with, and that's very difficult. And so I appreciate what you're all going for. And I can also mention that, as you know, I have a daughter who's about to start college. And for every small liberal arts college in New England that is of the same size as my daughter's, they all have a different plan, even if they're 15 miles apart. So I just want everyone to recognize that this is incredibly challenging. And before we start shooting off, emails of complaint or whatever, we need time to digest. Like Holly said, we just got this. We need time to read, think through, and really process what's been done and why. So for a couple of my questions, Mr. Gonsalves, you actually answered one of them. I was going to ask if someone could please explain why the Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, and not Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And it sounded like you said it's because it's way too much, a 5-day gap without any exposure in person felt like too far apart. Is that correct?
That is correct. We want to maximize when we are seeing kids. The last thing we want to do is not see kids for 5 days, 4 days. We want to just create a schedule that has us seeing kids live in person, as with the least number of days in between.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate the effort being made to get people into the school, to meet their teachers, for the teachers to meet those kids who are all new to them. Because I know a lot of our surrounding communities are trying to start completely remotely. And I appreciate the effort to get students in, even if it's for a short amount of time, to try to build the knowledge and the experience of what those kids are like a little bit, and what the teachers like, and they can build a relationship. So I do appreciate that effort, even as few hours as it is has been presented. I'm curious to know, I have so many questions too, I'm trying to read my bad handwriting too. So like, what are the parameters and who are like the key people? And you don't have to answer this now, but these are things I think people would want to know, I would want to know. Like, how would it ever be determined that we're going to switch from, let's say we started with the hybrid, we have to switch to a fully remote model? Like, what are the parameters that we'd be looking at to then flip to that decision? Who would be making that decision? I'm assuming I'm hoping we would not have to rely on the state to do that. We can make our own decisions.
Well, I'll just chime in for that one, Aim. I think Massachusetts is an interesting state in the sense of you have a governor that does issue orders like last spring, but you also have 351 cities and towns that operate pretty with autonomy. So, any decisions around schools could come from as high as the governor last spring, but also would be working with our Board of Health, Mass DPH, and all the different folks. So.
That's helpful, because I would imagine, our needs and our medical situation and our population is very different from people out in Pittsfield. And so for the state to come out and say what to do, that doesn't necessarily serve their needs or our needs. We need to be able to do what we need to do for our people. And I know another question that you would need to address down the road very soon, though, would be, and somebody brought this up earlier, so a class has some positive COVID tests. What is the protocol? It sounded like you'd have cohort A and B because they had gone back to back. You'd probably take that whole class. They'd stay out for 2 weeks. Like, people would need to know what that means.
Yeah, there would be a really strict protocol. There's a protocol that the state has put out. I could let the health people speak to it, certainly, but there's absolutely be protocols in place.
And this is Caroline Ibbotson. Cheryl and I are going to be meeting as a team. So like the school nurses, the health department are going to work together to establish those protocols in line with what DPH has set forth and what we've already been doing with contact tracing and positive test results in the community.
Thanks. And then my last one for now will be, and this kind of was brought up also by all my colleagues. So we have kids especially I keep thinking about elementary schools. So they're in school until 1, and they're 6 feet apart, and they're having a snack. But I'm assuming we leave at 1. Part of the reason, and Holly was trying to get at this, is because we're worried about them eating in the room. It sounded like, I'm guessing that's part of it, right? So I was just wondering if we considered 2 full days. It was the concern to get home to pay attention to, because I understand we only have so many teachers to pay attention to kids who've been home all day, or is it because we're concerned about spreading illness through having lunch in the classroom?
So for us, I mean, certainly this is a first draft that we have to put together. Much of the plans the state has asked us to put together, a lot of it will depend on where the virus is when school starts up. I think that what's important to know is, there has to be a balance between thinking about, for us, this is a draft. We'll certainly get a lot more input. We'll certainly see other communities and models, and we've been working closely with all the local communities and people across the state. But at the end of the day, it's not, schools are a complex operation in terms of food services, transportation, facilities, HVAC, teaching and learning, social emotional learning, prioritizing equity in students who receive special education services, 504s, EL, and the list goes on. And I think that what folks need to know is there will be, and if you look at the DESE guidance, there will have to be a tremendous amount of training, which we plan to work on and we have in the works in terms of training not only kids and our students, but having a North Andover Parent University, and more importantly, training staff. I think it goes back to what Nikki Murphy said in the beginning, our director of SEL. First comes physical safety and then your psychological safety. I mean, there's a lot of folks I can only imagine being a kindergartner entering school for the first time, and this is my experience.
Right.
So it's under a very different experience. Certainly this is a draft. We're open to feedback. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the school committee will have to make a decision on the 10th and look at it. I do think that things will probably have to change throughout August, but it is incredibly complex. And I think that, certainly there are a lot of things to look at. What I would mention too, though, is I think that, we do have a lot of terrific people. So for all of the different things that we would have to operationalize, we have talented leaders, teachers, and folks that will be creative to find ways to do things differently. Our goal, though, aim at the end of the day, is to bring back as many kids as possible in North Andover safely. And simply put, right now, it would be at that 3-foot distance. Couldn't
6 foot.
No, if we had to bring everyone back with safety precautions, and there would be challenges around mask breaks, around lunch, around a whole host of things. So we're not certainly saying this is, I know there are some people that would like something like this. I know there are others that wouldn't. I do know it's a lot different than the spring in terms of accountability. So it is certainly something, like I said, on the website, I'm sure there'll be a ton of questions, and we will compile them. We will do a roundtable. We will put an FAQ up and answer them the best we can from our experts and our health people. And certainly open to all sorts of ideas. I will say,
can I say one thing, Greg, before?
Yeah. Yep.
I know my other colleagues want a chance to go still. Helen hasn't spoken, but so to try to find a positive lining, again, on the first wave of trying to take this on, we've all, I'm sure, every single parent has been reading stuff, every report, every analysis, everybody's point of view. And one thing that I've read that I thought was a very positive thing for what your hybrid model does allow is that even though there's shorter days with kids, the kids aren't with the teachers as long, there are fewer of them with a much more intense time. And I read a couple of teachers say, I could actually do more with less time with fewer kids than I could with more kids and more time, more kids at once and more time. And I don't know if that's true or not. That was, two different people mentioned that. I thought that was interesting, and that is something the hybrid model would allow. So I'll leave it there.
Well, I want to thank my colleagues for your thoughtful comments and questions, and I know we will all have many more in the days to come. So my first question is going to be with regards to teaching and learning and pedagogy. And we're saying that having students in a classroom is really important. And we're saying that we had pods of students at desks and shared tables, and we've done a lot with teamwork. And I'm wondering how a 3-foot or a 6-foot face-forward model is pedagogically appropriate and helpful to children. It sounds to me like 1950s stand and deliver teaching. So please enlighten me if you can on that.
Well, there's certainly some challenges, and it would be different. So, the seats at that point, there are a lot of different components. If you're at the 6-foot mark, a teacher could walk down the middle and be at the 3. Miss Marks, I know there's a whole host of things you could add. It's a challenge. I mean, it's a challenge. And it's a challenge, screen time can be a challenge for kids, but it also could be a challenge to be sitting, being 8 years old and sitting in a room at a desk that you're not moving from for 4 hours wearing a mask, and at the end of the day, we have to be, the safety part is first, we work closely with our folks. And like I said, this is a draft. This is, the first crack at it, and there'll be a lot of questions, and our team will look at those and try to answer those the best we can.
So again, I'm certainly not trying to poke holes in a plan that's been developed, but at some point this committee is going to need to weigh out the options, and it's going to be important for us to be able to think about which option is best and why it's best. And certainly teaching and learning is one of the things that we need to take into consideration. Another question that I have, and you may not have an answer right now, is, are we absolutely confident that this synchronous learning will work and can happen? That every household that has 2 or 3 or 4 students will have devices, will have a Wi-Fi network that's strong enough to support synchronous, that the Chromebooks that they're assigned, if they need them, that the devices, whatever devices they have, will not have such difficulty maintaining the live stream interactive, such as to make it, successful. I'm quite concerned about that. And I don't necessarily expect an answer, especially since our guru of technology is not in the room.
I would just say, Helen, early on, we gave out over 1,200 Chromebooks last year. We're in the process of collecting them now. We ordered 2,400 that are coming in, and we want to take care of every kid to have a device that needs one. But we do strongly believe that we will have enough for every student in the district if need be. And we also applied for a grant as part of that $25 million technology grant with the state. And we would work to buy hotspots or get internet to anyone that didn't have it.
Yeah, I think someone spoke earlier about the training needs of parents too, because I don't know that it wasn't necessarily just about, people had the bandwidth or the connectivity in the books, but I think given that it's still, like anybody else, when you have a problem, oftentimes you ask that question to your child. So now you're in the position of needing to answer those questions yourself. But I think that was part of the parent university conversation too.
It is. We have that as one of the topics that we'll address at Parent University. We'll provide some parent training around the devices. For example, all of our elementary students go into Google Classroom via Clever and make sure parents know how to do that. We are also planning in our initial PD early in the year, training all of our teachers on how to train the students that they see in front of them, because we are hopeful that we will be in some form of in-person learning, whether it's hybrid or whatever. There are districts that are already going fully remote right from the get-go. We are hoping that we will have students in front of us, and we will make sure that we provide some PD to those students to make sure that they know how to access their computers and the programs that are on those computers. We have also purchased some programs, particularly at the elementary level, that are virtual programs that can go seamlessly between in-person, hybrid, and remote learning if needed. So they're literacy programs and math programs. They will also provide some assessment for us that will help our teachers understand what they need to do with those students in those smaller group settings as well. So obviously, there's a lot more to talk about, and we won't get into a lot of details, but I know Nikki had mentioned the Parent University around SEL. Marcy just mentioned it in terms of tech. We're also planning to provide some support for parents via the Parent University on strategies and tools to use with their students should they be at home for some portion of remote learning. For literacy and math combined in SEL, we're talking about engagement and motivation with these students, helping support families with that. We'll talk about support strategies for our students with special needs and our English learners. So we have a whole cadre of topics that we're looking at to, and I actually, one of the literacy coaches has already sent me the one of the trainings for parents for reading for 3rd through 5th graders, to stockpile our resources.
You know, again, thank you. I just think that the bandwidths at homes are going to be challenging if all the remote check-ins are at the same time in the afternoons, which I feel like Mr. Teresi asked as far as, you know, how the parents would help the kids get onto their check-ins at the same time if they have 2 or 3 kids as well. So I think I mirror that question. I am hopeful that as your plan continues to evolve, we will see a lot of specifics around the dollar signs attached to each one of these plans, around if we are the ones determining the metrics that say we're in person or we're remote or we're hybrid, we're 3 foot or we're 6 foot, if that's the town of North Andover who's determining those metrics, that we'll know what those metrics are at the onset. What's going to trigger each seamlessly connected between remote or in-person learning. So I'm looking for some of those specifics. And lastly, I did hear Dr. Gilligan say that there's a access on the website for parents who want to ask questions, and that there's going to be some sort of an event to answer those questions. But people really are going to need to talk. Like, we need to talk about what our questions are and how they can be answered. And families are going to ask us questions that we don't have the answers to, and we can hold those questions and we can bring those questions to you. But, you know, I don't know, do we direct families to call their principal if they have questions? Do we direct families to call the superintendent's office? Is there a helpline that there's going to be somebody attached to that can answer questions? Or do we just need to stay back so that you all can do the work of answering all the questions as they come in? I'm not sure process-wise what's the best thing there and how you've thought about that.
Well, Helen, typically I do not email people back. I call them. The rate of emails I've had in the last couple of weeks have prevented me from doing so. That's why we created the link on the website, because it gives us the ability to have Bev code those and then find the right folks to answer those questions, you know, so that we can then, you know, provide that information to the folks in our community.
And I would compliment the superintendent on that. Prior to serving on school committee, having had a child in one of your schools when you were principal, having children in all of our schools, or all the levels of our schools anyway, I had great responses from principals. I had great responses from central office when I had questions and when I had needs. And they were often phone calls and not emails, and I have appreciated that.
Yeah, and
So
I think Helen too. One of the other things that we could have participate is some of our medical community. So Dr. Chan, I know he couldn't make it tonight, but I mean that's one of our working groups. The state has put out quite a bit of information on their guidelines in terms of the 3 feet, and there are other health organizations saying different things. So you have to weigh that balance. And ultimately, I know that the school committee and our team and the families in this community we will do what's best for North Andover and for our kids. And it is not lost on me as superintendent of schools the challenges of working families, different situations, and all the challenges that people face financially, out of work, and more importantly, just the stress level. I mean, the stress level of everybody in the community. It's been a challenge because they've been on high alert for a long time. And I just think, with almost 5,000 students, we have to find a way, if we're going to bring them back safely, to guarantee their safety. And, I think if you visit restaurants, if you get a haircut, and you think about the precautions about doing those little things, when you have 24 first graders in a room, or you have all these complex, components of school that seemed easy in the old days, it certainly leads us to have to think about much more than we had in the past. And for me, my recommendations will always be safety first. But we have a great team, and I'm sure we'll continue to move forward for what's best for our kids.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Gilligan. I mean, your ability to stay positive at 9:30 at night when we've been meetings till 6 o'clock, and when you have probably gone many, many days with less sleep and less quality outdoor time than we would wish in people's summer. And I don't think any of this was ever easy, and certainly none of us really anticipated being in this position. So I'm looking for the will of the committee. At this point, do we want to go around again, or do we feel like we've kind of done what we can? I see Andrew wants to
I have a couple of comments
chime in again.
Helen, I have a couple of comments as well.
You have a couple comments? Okay, so I will go to Mr. McDevitt and come back to Mr. Cherisi, and I'll come to the other two members as well. We do have another agenda item, and it is 9:23. And we want to do justice with the time that we're using, and also be respectful of the time that's in front of us. So, Mr. McDevitt.
Yeah, Dr. Gilligan just mentioned the stress level of parents in the community, and I would be remiss if I didn't say I think it just went up tremendously high at about 6 o'clock when some emails went out. So I am cognizant, Dr. Gilligan, of the fact that this is a draft. But as I look at this, and again, I need to spend a lot more time pouring through this. It looks to me that if you choose to be all remote, you need to make that decision. Once you make that decision, it is quote unquote final for the entire school year. And that decision needs to be made August 7th. Is that correct?
Well, we're asking for that information. Remote, this category of people who decide or their children cannot go to school, is somewhat of a category the state has just provided much more detailed information for last Friday, the 24th of June. They have a couple learning platforms that they're not allowed to tell us yet because I don't think they've signed the contracts. So we will, there's a lot of opportunity. So we will look at, some of the different programs that we own and licenses. We'll look at matching up some of our staff that may not be able to come back. It will all depend on that number. And for the continuity of learning, it would be best to stay in that cohort. That said, things happen, things change. And for us, what people need to know is, we have to be prepared to be, whether we're in school in a hybrid or full or we're remote. We have to be able to, more particularly, if we are in school and we have to go remote, we have to be ready to do it, and I believe we can be.
So I'm just thinking that through. I mean, that's really giving parents and families at this point probably, somewhere in the vicinity of 12 days to somewhat make that decision. So I want to remind us of that. Another thing is, I think I heard correctly, but I would like Mr. Jackson and Mr. Gonzalez to just reiterate this. Grades will be taken and tests will be given, papers, etc., at the middle and the high school level. Is that correct?
All levels.
All levels. Okay. And on remote days, attendance will be taken?
Attendance will be taken for all in-class meetings. That would be the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If you have remote classes scheduled, attendance is taken.
And I'm going to assume for each class.
For every individual class.
Correct.
Glad to hear that. And again, gentlemen, it sounded like the students at the middle school were not moving. Teachers were going to rotate to them, if I understood that correctly?
That is correct, except for related arts classes.
Okay.
We're going to allow the students, as of this schedule, to move to one related arts class per day. And the way we set up the schedule, the related arts teachers will have no class in between classes, giving us the luxury of more time to clean before the next class comes in. But those related arts teachers are teaching 3 virtual classes in the afternoon.
Okay, and I assume at the high school, the students will move. Is that, I don't see Mr. Jackson. He's somewhere.
That is correct. That is correct. The students would move in the high school model.
Okay. And I have one last question, and then I'll let someone else on the committee go. Hypothetically, if we're back in and we have students who are there on a Monday, Thursday attendance, and we have sports, those students will then grab their lunch and go, and I'm assuming be home, and then practices and all of that stuff will not start until somewhere in the 3:30 time frame. So they will go home, come back, because they will have remote classes at home. Or are they going to be able to stay in the cafeteria or the auditorium on campus in order to do that?
No decision on sports has been made. I think the MI2A came out and said September 14th is what I heard last. And it may have come out from DESE. I may not have seen that one yet. But we'll keep you posted on sports.
All right, I'll let Amy or Ollie or someone else go for a second.
Let's go to Mr. Teresi, because he identified that he had some questions that he wanted to ask or comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just got an email from one of my friends that said that my comments were unproductive, and I've been thinking about that. And then, Madam Chair, you said, you didn't want to poke holes in the plan. And respectfully, and I think I did speak respectfully, I think it's our job to poke holes in the plan. I think we're here to represent the parents and, their perspective on things. And I think the biggest problem that most parents are going to have is what they're seeing here is not jiving with what they're dealing with right now. Kids, they're going to summer fun. They have 12 kids in a group. My kid's going to Minecraft camp next week from 9 to 3. They're going to have lunch. So why can't we have lunch here? Those are the kind of questions that I think that's our responsibility to ask those kind of questions. And I can't say it enough. I know how hard this group has worked on it, and I think I'm trying to be as respectful as I can to the work that you've done and the effort that's been put into this. But I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't have some comments or criticisms about it. As long as I'm doing it, I think, in a professional way. So I'll continue to go, Greg.
We don't take that personally. I mean,
good.
You
I'm
know,
glad.
things can be constructive. There's a lot of different things that can happen. You know, and
I know this
it's good value. I mean, to have different perspectives.
Yeah.
I just, I think one of the things that folks should know is that, if you can imagine people who do this for a living sitting around now for weeks and weeks and weeks in preparing, there's always the what ifs. Or what about this? And, certainly we're open to questions. We're open to be transparent and answer them the best we can. And the reality is it's not a great situation. And I know the other day, I have the good fortune to come into this office and work. And I have my own office. I don't wear a mask while I'm in there. I was somewhere the other day for 3 hours with a mask, and it was a challenge for me. So, look, we're meeting remotely now. Businesses are meeting remotely. I think that one of the things to weigh in is really getting more information on the medical guidance from those perspectives. And also, where's the virus going to be in September? We can't predict that.
Right, absolutely.
We just have to be prepared for it. And, David, the outside piece with camps, it's great. But, we have to be prepared because as soon as you have one person test, positive or...
That's going to happen. We all know there's going to be a staff, teacher, a kid who's going to test positive at some point. We all know it's going to happen. I just think that, again, the more we can have kids in the classroom, especially with the nicer weather at the beginning, and now it looks like we're not starting until September 16th, which is extremely disappointing, and I know that had nothing to do with you and this team. So that criticism is directed towards the commissioner and the MTA on that one. But people need to know they're going to make plans. I need to start thinking about making plans. How the heck am I going to get somewhere 3 days a week? It's safe to say, is it safe to say that community programs, after-school programs, they're not going to exist? Like there's going to be no kid stock.
No, so actually we're looking at Rick and Gallant, excuse me. I get the right. I think of Rick Gorman too. Yeah,
RG.
Yeah. So we'd be looking at ways to be able to do that piece. And I called Rick Gorman the other day because now we move into the operational phase of no matter what model we're in, and that's what the state's asked us to do. They've asked us to prepare all these different models, and simply put, we can fit everyone back at that 3-foot distance. And there's challenges. The Bradstreet, no. But there's a whole host of challenges around.
But that's the kind of stuff that there's a lot of kids that I'm sure that go to Kid Stop, but they go home for a couple hours and we got to get them back for Kid Stop because I mean I know this, but these are the questions that I'm gonna get starting tonight, tomorrow, that people got to make plans. We're all going to be competing for babysitters and stuff. It's going to be. I don't know. Again, I want to make sure that I'm being respectful to the work that you've done here because I know how hard you've worked on it, and I'm going to continue to push you on these issues. I'm going to push your team on these issues because we're getting pushed. We're getting pushed by the people. We answer to the public. We have to do that. So this is a work in progress. But the last point I'm going to make is I'm not going to get hung up on August 10th. You may have to do what you need to do, but I'm not going to get hung up on August 10th. If I'm not ready to make a decision on August 10th, I'm not going to make a decision on August 10th. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Teresi. Ms. Vitsky-Lynch.
I'm all set. I'll pass. I need to. Mine are too specific to ask tonight. I'll wait.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Mealy.
Sure. So I have 2 more things, and one, Mr. McDevitt touched on a little bit already, mostly about the remote learning academy, that people have to, they have a pretty short window, and frankly, some of those people aren't going to hear about that until the day it's due, right? Who aren't paying attention. Shockingly, I doubt there are very many, but there probably are some who aren't on top of this like a lot of people are. And it says once they've decided that they cannot change. And I'm wondering, fabulous world when come March and everybody's healthy and we can all go back to school, I'm assuming those people could come back to school, or would they have to stay?
No, that's correct, Amy. If we do go back to school in person, those people are certainly welcome to come back to school if they're comfortable. I think there may be parents, you saw the parent surveys, there may be some parents right now who already know that they are not going to send their students back to school, either because their students have health concerns or their family, within the home or the extended family concerns. And certainly, I think, as with anything, if somebody comes upon this after next week and has questions and concerns, we will certainly talk to them and work with them around it. The issue is the students who are in that remote academy, whatever that ends up looking like, are going to be doing a different curriculum and different work. So to kind of pop in and out of those students who will be moving, they're not going to want to go in when those students are in person or in-person hybrid anyway, because their goal is to stay away from that kind of situation. Right. So we wouldn't pop them in and out of those remote sessions. Does that make sense?
It does. I want to make sure people understood that. I wanted to make sure people understand, and you were very clear, but I want to say it again. There are 3 options. One's called remote. What you just described, this remote academy, is not that.
Right.
You can't sometimes do remote and sometimes do remote academy, and that's got to be super clear. And remote academy is not North Andover School, like what your kid next door is doing, but from your house. It's not.
Right. Well, it would be North Andover Public Schools educating those students, and on the same state standards. It just may be in a variety of different ways, whether it's a learning platform or matching up teachers. One of the reasons we ask, and we anticipate there'll be people, I think there are a lot of folks who know kind of now they have immunocompromised relatives or they have a pre-existing condition, is that we have to create class lists and plan. All of it's subject to change based on enrollment data. I saw in a neighboring community there were, I think, they had 6,000 surveyed, and I think it was 1,200 or 1,300 said that they would not come back to school. So this will play out, and please know that whatever we put forward, we believe is in the best interest of all of our kids.
And I do appreciate that. So my one last question, which I'm not expecting an answer for now. Having a child who just finished high school, I recognize that I think the biggest challenge, aside from little teeny tiny friends in kindergarten, would be the high school, because you don't go to class. You are not a sophomore and take classes that are only with sophomores. There are classes you take with other grades. And so I'm just curious, I don't really understand how you would determine cohorts in high school, because let's say I'm taking Shakespeare, but I'm an A cohort. So when I go to my Shakespeare class, 14 of us are there, but then if someone goes in the B cohort, there are 3 kids in the Shakespeare class. So that's, again, I don't need an answer, but those are the kind of things I'm trying to understand better. And I do appreciate the challenge of high school. And also everybody walking around.
So I too have a lot of more granular sorts of questions. And I guess one of my questions is, when we're talking about how we're going to meet the hours requirements for the state, and is the state going to accept a plan such as the one that we put forward, or are they going to say it's not enough? I don't know what the process is beyond the room that we're talking in. So I expect that those answers will come in the next couple of weeks. And I'm going to ask us to leave this topic here for now. Do I have agreement from the committee members on that? I see some nodding.
You're the boss, Helen.
It's late.
Well, thank you, David. But I want to respect the will of the committee, because that's from whence we draw our authority is as a committee.
Yeah, but I would request we have another updated meeting next week. I mean, I think our next meeting is scheduled for the 10th, and to be, I mean, that's even after the deadline. We're asking families to decide on remote, and we don't even know exactly what the remote plan is. So I'm fine with continuing this along, but not on the 9th. We have to have a meeting next week. There's too much.
Respectfully, Andrew, we don't have committee members who are available on Thursday of next week. And while our administrators were putting together their answers to the questions that are coming from all over the place, I think that's an opportunity for us to hear more in that setting. Again, I'm open to the will of the committee, but my feeling is that we won't have business to do as a committee. We can ask questions, but I feel like those questions can be answered and asked in lots of ways other than specifically a committee meeting.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with you, Helen. Our job is to represent the community. This is the most important decision that we as a community are making. It is about parents, it is about families, and it is about the children in this community. So if you wish to have a meeting on the 10th, that's fine. You can go ahead, but I'm not in favor of that. This is too important. We're asking parents to make a decision for August 7th, Mrs. Picard.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Can I make a suggestion?
You may.
And I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but we were supposed to have our annual retreat on Tuesday, August 4th. I think, I think we're going to get a lot of feedback. My phone's been blowing up for the last hour or two. I'm sure everyone else's has. Maybe we could talk about the specific of the details, but maybe we could think about having a public meeting, hearing, just to gather input and comment. I think people, listen, I've been around this business for long enough now. People sometimes just need to vent and need to be heard. But there will be people that have very specific, constructive comments to give us. That could be beneficial. And, again, it's short notice, but maybe, some of us can be available in the morning of Tuesday, and maybe some of us can be available in the nighttime of Tuesday. I think I told you I'm not available the 5th, 6th, or 7th next week, but Tuesday I had blocked off at least the morning part for the retreat. So I just throw that out there as a possibility.
So it is possible for us to have, for example, online office hours where 2 of us would be present online to listen to the questions that community members have. If we have a meeting, it's a little more challenging for us to have a dialogue because of the open meeting law and how that would work. We could have an outdoor hearing that would take some organizing around having a sound system, something similar to what we would need to have, what we did at town meeting. I am perfectly willing and available if folks want to recapture the time that we had set aside for our retreat, which would be the 4th of August in the morning. I believe we said we would start at 9 o'clock in the morning, and that could be a meeting setting. I know that the Board of Selectmen has found a way to have people be able to call into that meeting, so we might be able to use that. And I've had conversations with our town council about how we could have the community come into the meeting and be able to ask questions, and similarly to how we have a number of participants from the school leadership here tonight. So long as the meeting is live streamed, we can have up to 250 people present in a Google Meets. And if we had more than 250 people who wanted to participate, we could ask someone who, after they've made their public comment or asked their public question, to leave the meeting to make space for someone else to come into the meeting. Is it the will of the committee that we have such a meeting that would be live streamed and during which we could have live questions and answers from the community on Tuesday morning, say at 9 o'clock?
So I can give you my initial reaction here. I think it's important and valuable that we as a committee hear these questions and hear the answers, but we can't answer the questions. So I would be interested in having what I think the administrators talked about, having a round table to answer the questions that are starting to probably come in right now. Again, I would ask people to digest overnight and think a little bit and send your question. And then after that, and I would obviously like to see that be part of it, whatever. And then also have another meeting if we could before the 10th. It sounds like Mr. Trussey's not available, but yes, I think it's important that we as a committee hear all these things, but we cannot provide the answer. So it's most important that the people who can provide the answers are available.
And again, if we had a school committee meeting on Tuesday at 9 o'clock in the morning, our superintendent, I imagine, would be present and would be able to answer questions, and we would be facilitating that conversation between the community and our superintendent. If that's the will of the committee.
So respectfully, 9 o'clock in the morning doesn't really work for a lot of working parents.
Well, my suggestion, Andrew, was maybe if well, first of all, to comply with the open meeting law, we'd have to post immediately tomorrow morning for 9 o'clock on Tuesday. But if it's just two people taking comments or listening to comments and trying to be responsive, maybe you do the 9 o'clock and then you do something at night if people are available at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock at night. You know, maybe you do two different ones. I agree with you, Andrew. This is like, you know, we've dealt with a lot of stuff over the last, I know this is my 6th year on here, I guess. This is something. So I'm prepared to do it. Anyways, that's my thoughts on it. If there's only two people doing it, I don't think you need a post, but.
Correct. It doesn't have to be posted as a meeting, but we could call it something like open office hours, and we can have Dr. Gilligan or somebody or some buddies from his staff to come in and answer those questions, and we can be present with the community to do that.
Helen, one of the reasons we suggested the form is that I think there'll be a lot of questions, and I think that we want to have the right people from the right areas to answer those type of things. You know, so that was what we had suggested, and please know, you know, I care most about North Andover, but these challenges are all across the region.
I think, Dr. Gilligan, we probably would need to have both of those things. We would need to have your roundtable answering of questions that come in through the website, and there are as many different kinds of learners as there, you know, among the adults as there are among children, and some people are not going to fill out a form on the website, and they would like to make a phone call or show up and ask their questions, and at this time, if we can most fully accommodate them, I think we need to make an effort to do that. And so, again, I'm going to come back to our committee members. I am available both morning and evening of Tuesday of next week, the 4th of August. And I would be happy to be with any one of you to do open office hours. It sounds as if the desire to have a public meeting is not as strong as to have opportunities in the day and in the evening. Mr. Teresi, I heard you say that you were available and willing to do that on Tuesday morning. Is that a commitment? And I'm, you know.
I could do, yeah. I mean, I was planning, my schedule is still blocked for 9 o'clock. I'm sorry. Still blocked for 9 o'clock. And I think the evening, I could, you know, if you're going to do something at night too, I mean, make yourself available definitely that day.
And so is there somebody else who would like to be with Mr. Teresi from 9 to 11 on Tuesday morning?
So, Mrs. Picard, I just want to remind you that in order for us to have a school committee meeting, we don't have to have all 5 members there. We do just need to have quorum. And the fact that you're now talking about debating this and getting information from the community and only have 2 members present, to me, is just offensive.
So your preference, Mr. McDevitt, would be to have a meeting on the 6th of August or any? So we have 3 members that can be present on the 6th of August.
Great.
We don't have time to post for Monday the 3rd. I believe we would have time to post for Tuesday the 4th. So I can ask if we have the availability of members to be present. Please, Mr. McDevitt, understand I am trying to be flexible and helpful to this committee, not difficult. I am looking for the will of the committee to move forward. And, you know, so it's late at night and we've got difficult information and everybody's stress is up. But I am telling you that I'm available and I'm willing and I'm interested in meeting what the committee's needs are. So if it's to have a meeting on Tuesday night or Wednesday night, I'm available both those times, and I would need to know the availability of committee members so that we have at least 3 present. On Thursday night, we would have 3 present only. So is it the will of the committee to meet on Tuesday night? And would we have more than 3 present?
I can meet any night.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy. Mr. McDevitt?
I'm in.
Any of the nights? Ms.
Any
Vitsky-Lynch?
night. It's that important any night.
Thank you. Ms. Vitsky-Lynch?
I'm not available Wednesday or Thursday. I could possibly be available Tuesday.
And Mr. Teresi?
It's a Tuesday. You got me Tuesday.
So I'm going to return to you, Dr. Gilligan. Could you and or some members of your team be available for us on Tuesday, and can Bev post that for us tomorrow morning?
Well, Bev, I hope you're listening. That could be absolutely a possibility. And please know, all of this is subject to change based on where the virus is, and more updates and guidance from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
So just Tuesday night then, Helen? Tuesday night, it sounds like all 5 of us could be there. I hate this.
Tuesday night, sounds like all 5 of us can be there, with some possibility that there may only be 4. So this committee will meet on Tuesday, the 4th of August at 6 p.m. And we will accept at that time input from the public. I hope that we'll be able to do that with them being called into our meeting in the same way that the Board of Selectmen has been able to do that. And again, I'm asking our administration to accommodate that. And I am going to Ms. Mealy, who's asking a question.
Yes, thank you. So I understand through someone watching that it's possible, I don't know if the district will allow it, but that Zoom can take more than 250 people. So I don't know if we could pursue using that instead.
Zoom can take up to 1,000 people. I think we as a district are comfortable using Google Meets. That's what we've been using. And if we have more than 250 people, they don't all need to be on the meeting at the same time in order for them to have their time to ask their question or make their comment. So I think that Google Meets will be sufficient for our needs.
I would agree that I don't know how we would get through 250.
Guys, we're open to anything. We want to be transparent. At the same time, this is a lot of information to digest. I know there are a lot of communities that are just getting this information tonight too, and they're taking a vote on the 6th. I know that we had it for the 10th. You know, we'll still continue to plan for you know, taking those questions, because the real important part is you know, having the right folks there to answer it. And, you know, I think that one of the questions that comes up quite a bit is, you know, the 3-foot recommendation by, that you should strive for 6 feet, but the state has said 3 feet. You know, we've done the tours of those classrooms. There's some pictures, you know, in the work today. And there are other organizations, health organizations, that say strive for the 6 feet. I just think that folks need to know that we're willing to do anything we can for our kids in North Andover for their best education, but it's got to be safe. And the complexity of doing school and doing this for school, there's quite a bit to it. And we will continue to plan to be prepared for any of these situations. but I do not want to overstate or understate the complexity and the challenges that not just North Andover, even though that's what I care about, is here. Kids, parents, and families are facing everywhere. We will do our best on behalf of the kids to keep them safe, because their safety and well-being on my watch as superintendent is going to be the most important thing to me and this community. And I'll leave you at this. We had a model that we really were pushing, looking at, trying to bring kids back at elementary. We know the value of that. I understand that. I also, my passion is kids who may start a little bit behind the 8 ball. All of our kids, but we have kids with different challenges. And at the end of the day, when it's DESE and their medical advisory team saying, 3 feet can be okay with all these safety precautions, and you have these other folks in conflicting medical information that says 6 feet, I know how I feel, and I think right now, depending on what we know and the information we have, I think that this is right at the middle of the road. I do know a lot of districts that are thinking about going completely remote. I think we have to let this play out and see how it goes. But I will tell you, it's the amount of money that we're spending with the COVID money and the CARES Act and all the different things we're doing and the planning we're doing. It's pretty complex, but we're going to continue to do it. At the end of the day, kids have to be safe. And, if I could wave a wand and say everyone can be back in school, I would. But it's a challenge, and I understand all the feelings from every side. So
we will continue this conversation at a meeting on the 4th of August at 6 p.m. And we will progress now to our next agenda item under new business, which is our superintendent's contract. Currently, our superintendent has completed the 2nd year of a 3-year contract, and he is just entered the first month of the 3rd year of a 3-year contract. And we have been in negotiations with him for a successor contract or an extension replacement contract. I'm not exactly sure which is the proper terminology for that. But the proposal that we have at this point for a contract for Dr. Gilligan would begin on the 1st of July 2020 and would go through 2023. The terms and conditions of that contract would be the same as the prior contract. And I did circulate draft proposal to the committee members in advance of this meeting for their review. So what I would ask procedurally is for a motion to award a successor contract, extension, replacement contract to Dr. Gilligan. And once we have that moved and seconded, we will have discussion on any questions or concerns folks have about that contract. So I would entertain a motion now to extend Dr. Gilligan's contract or replace Dr. Gilligan's contract with a contract that begins July 1st, 2020 and extends through 2023.
So moved.
I heard 2 people say so moved. So I heard Mr. Teresi move and Mr. McDevitt second. And I would ask if there's any discussion, and I will go through the roll call. Mr. Teresi, any discussion?
Yeah, my first question is, do you still want the extension?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? I think I was the 8th or 9th superintendent in 15 years here. And I'm telling you, I think to make a difference, we can't have this continuous start and stop of leadership. And if I wasn't doing it here, my passion is kids, I'd be doing it somewhere else. And there's nowhere in the world that I want to lead a district more than North Andover. So
I knew what the answer was. Obviously, I think you're doing a fantastic job, and this is going to be a challenge I'm sure we're going to have a very hot, heated meeting next Tuesday, but I know you're up for the task. You've handled all these crises very, very well. And I think getting you in your walk year was important to sign you for another 3 years.
Yeah, and just please know, these conversations are happening in every community.
Yeah.
And it's heated everywhere. And, I just want folks to know who are watching at home. My communication style typically is I do call you back. I will probably take your comments and put them in and have Bev code them like I typically do to have the common themes to get those answers to. But you may not hear from me directly.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. McDevitt, any discussion of a contract?
No discussion.
Okay. Ms. Mealy, any discussion of a contract renewal?
No, ma'am. Eager to have it settled.
Okay. And Ms.
Eager
Fitzgibbon?
to leave.
No.
Okay. So I think we're ready for a roll call vote. I have no discussion or comments to make either. So I think we're ready for a roll call vote, and I will start with Mr. Teresi.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. McDevitt?
Aye.
Ms. Fitzgibbon-Lynch?
Yes.
Ms. Mabley?
Aye.
And the chair votes yes, so that is 5-0. Thank you, Dr. Gilligan, for extending your time with us until 2023. We will be needing your leadership and guidance and your excellent ability to build a team and communicate and bring us together. So thank you so much for agreeing to that extension with us.
Thank you.
So we have no more agenda items, but sometimes the members like to have a comment or something that they want to share about their experience in North Andover Public Schools. And so I would take one last go around. If you have any comments or things that you want to share with the community at this time, and I will start with Mr. Teresi.
I did not have dinner tonight, so I want to go home.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. McDevitt, do you want to keep him from dinner?
I haven't had dinner either, David. So if you want to come through the woods, I'll fire up the grill, 6 feet apart. But I do just want to thank the committee. I think it's too important for us to get this information out to families as best as we can. So I recognize that we did not plan on having a meeting next week. I just think it's too important for us to hold that back. And we have no problem meeting at other points for things like budget because we say that work is important. Getting students and faculty back into our buildings is the most important thing that we are doing. So thank you all for that. And I know that I probably came across angry and hangry. You don't have to nod so quick, Amy. But the reality of it is we need this time and we need to hear from the community, and the community needs to hear what's going on. So thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. McDevitt. Ms. Fitzgibbon-Lynch.
Sorry, I do not have any comments.
Okay, thank you very much. And Ms. Mabley, anything you want to?
Yeah, so I've been thinking a lot about this, and so I don't know if everybody knows that what North Andover does for the contracts is something called, the last several years, I think Mr. McDevitt's become professional at it, interest-based bargaining, which means that the parties come together with what their desires are, but ultimately they have to come together with what everybody can live with. And I encourage us, I encourage the parents, and I encourage the teachers that, there is not a right answer to this. I wish that there were, there's not, and we're not all gonna get what we want. So we're gonna have to really try to find out what we can live with, what our families can live with, how we can function to get through to the other side of this. And I just have been thinking about IBB, just about this topic. I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mabley. Again, thank you for everybody who was on the conversation tonight. I look forward to seeing some number of you next week. And I want to thank North Andover CAM, who works tirelessly with us to make sure that we can have these meetings and have them accessible to the public. It's so important and it's so helpful to all of us. And at this time, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I will move to adjourn.
So moved. Second, discussion, none.
Excellent.
And I have not eaten dinner either.
No dinner, anybody. Ms. Mealy has moved and Mr. Teresi has seconded, and we will have a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Teresi
Aye.
and Mr. McDevitt
Aye.
and Ms. Vitsky Lynch
Yes.
and Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
And the chair also votes yes. We are 5-0 and we are adjourned at 10:05.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate your.
Thank you, guys.
Good night, everyone.